Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the fanfiction guy. Back with another fanfiction. This is the second part of What If Deku and Momo Were Geniuses? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Uraraka, dressed in an apron with great concentration, opens a pot full of smoke. Azui and his two brothers wave, smiling. Kyoka runs around smiling, appreciating her engagement ring. It has a treble clef. Ida trembles nervously as she holds a piece of paper. Itsuka prepares to strike with one of her giant hands. Todoroki bends down to pick up a piece of paper, but when you touch it, it burns. Hatsum lifts a tightening wrench with a smile. Nijire holds a tomato with a harmless smile. Hagakure lovingly embraces a bunch of roses. Ojiro walks with a slight blush on his face. Momo reads a book uneasily on how to be a good housewife. Izuku raises his fist with a look of determination. Bakugo eats a curry with noticeable annoyance. Midnight holds her whip and strokes it fondly. Ashido drinks a glass of sack with teary eyes. Mother's things. If Momo considered herself a cultured and erudite person before, now she felt like a newborn baby before Izuku's mother. Have a schedule for weekdays, holidays, and important dates. She spoke while the woman was getting ready. As soon as she settled into her chair, Inko began to talk 1,000 times an hour about her cheeses as a housewife, already aware that she would now live with her son. All this while brewing tea with a smile. The black-haired woman created a notebook and a pencil as fast as she could to start writing down everything the red-haired woman said. Desperation made her drop her pencil more than twice, falling to the floor on the third time when she tried to take the pencil without wanting to bend down. "I'm fine," said the girl aloud, jumping up. "Have a balanced menu of recipes that has at least one day of beans." I ignore her fall the green hair and continue with her guide. Writing down as much as she could, Yaoyorozu tried to keep up with the woman, changing pages every 20 seconds so she could continue writing. Nerves began to take over her. The speed with which this woman spoke was out of this world. Her hands began to lose speed and strength. She had to think something. "Mrs. M. Midoriya?" I call him, sounding more like a call for help. "Could you repeat the last part?" she asked nervously. "Of course." The colored clothes separated from the rest, as well as the wool and the jeans, he continued. The black-haired woman preferred not to open her mouth again while the green-haired woman was talking, saying that we weren't on the subject of cooking, she thought, feeling disappointed and scared. Not being focused on what I was doing caused a huge mistake. The tip of her pencil broke and Momo turned pale. While she lamented her misfortune, Inko continued talking as if nothing had happened. "If I think a chopper will take longer, I must not waste my time." She said she was determined, using her quirk to make another pencil. The second broke again. The Creole heroine beaten by a pencil. Moments later, jogging as fast as he could, Izuku climbed the stairs, hoping that it wasn't too late. He knew his mother well. In no way would she be able to intimidate or make his girlfriend feel bad. Even so, the boy had a bad feeling, and from past experiences, when he felt that something was wrong, a catastrophe could happen. "I'll be back," said as soon as the green man entered the apartment. The place was silent, something that made him nervous. Without receiving a response to his warning, Izuku went to the kitchen, where he assumed Momo and her mother would be well deduced. Sitting at a small table, the two women were in what seemed to be a competition of looks, or so Izuku thought they were doing, since his mother saw the black-haired woman seriously, who lowered her face. What's going on?" I ask, feeling the tense atmosphere. The boy approached his partner. "Nothing, son. Could you pass me the ingredients?" she asked, recovering her maternal smile. "Momo? Is everything okay?" He grabbed her shoulders from behind, hoping that this would provoke a reaction, but the black-haired woman did not flinch. Izuku could feel all the sorrow and sadness that his girlfriend was going through at that moment, but there was something else in that sea of negative emotions, something not to be clearly distinguished. "Mom, what did you tell him?" asked the red-haired man, feeling disappointed. "Don't be angry with her," replied the black-haired lady for the lady. "He didn't say anything offensive. He didn't provoke me or anything," he confessed. "I only told the truth," said the boy's mother, beginning to prepare the foot. The black-haired woman clenched her fists. She had no answer to what the woman had said to her before. She had no way of refuting him. The green-haired woman told the truth and nothing more than that. Minutes before. Is Izuku a toy for you? Inko asked out of nowhere, turning to look at the black-haired woman. Huh. He stopped his writing to see the woman confused. His agitated breathing began to become serene. Excuse me, what did you say? Wonder. Yes, my son is a game, he answered, approaching the table to sit in front of the girl. Of course not. I love Izuku and always will. Momo said it with determination and without a hint of embarrassment. I don't believe you, the red-haired woman replied immediately. How can you assure me that you won't do the same thing you did to her in high school? Wonder. The black-haired woman was caught off the cuff. She knew that the woman was going to bring up the incident from high school, and Momo thought she was prepared for that. However, now that she was asking her so head-on, the girl couldn't help but feel a little nervous and intimidated. We were together for 3 years. Isn't that enough proof? I managed to answer him with a frown. And they're just going to live together, not to mention that it was my son who had to take the initiative. Again, I answer almost to the second. Yaoyorozu swallowed. Things were getting harder and harder for her, not to mention that everything the redhead was telling her was true. It doesn't matter who makes the first move. In the end, we both made the decision, and I accepted without hesitation, he explained, getting up a little from his chair. You're right, the woman spoke again. But that doesn't change the fact that Izuku is the one who seeks to move forward as a couple, she said calmly. The girl gradually retreated to her seat, feeling defeated and humiliated. Momo felt like she had been slapped hard. She's right, she thought. It was he who kept in touch with her when they were both separated. He was the one who offered comfort when his father died, risking his journey for her alone, and if it hadn't been for fate, neither of them would have met again in Sir's offices. If I remember correctly, it was even Izuku who started their relationship in high school, and you finished it, he said as if reading his mind. What had she done for their relationship? Tell him I love you and sleep with him. Momo felt horrible. Love went beyond all that, and it had to be Izuku who realized that first. It's not about initiative, it's about development as a couple. My son understands that you, on the other hand. He got up from his chair and turned around. I was afraid that if we moved forward things would change, I tried to explain to the black-haired one. Change is not always bad. He took the thermos with the tea and served himself to her and the girl. She was in her comfort zone. The first year of dating was so unique and magical that Momo didn't want things to change, scared that along the way something would happen and they would both separate. Now I'll ask you again. He took a sip of his drink. Is my son a game for you? I look him in the eye. Back to the present. Everyone present was silent while they ate Inko's lemon pie. The black-haired woman's face was sad, and she couldn't stop sighing from time to time. She hadn't even tasted the delicious dessert. Sai, I think it was a bad idea to come here, he said, infecting the mood of his girlfriend, the green-haired one. The two women at the table fixed their eyes on the boy. All their attention was focused on what he was about to say. It was delicious, ma'am, but I think it's time for us to go. She got up from the table and took her partner's hand. When he wanted to move and get away from the kitchen as fast as he could, Izuku was unable to walk. Apparently Yaoyorozu did not want to leave as much as he did. Momo? I call him worried. The green-haired man felt how his girlfriend's hand began to intertwine his fingers. Although the boy has the one with the soup strength quirk, the black-haired woman managed to make her partner sit back in his chair. After giving him a warm smile indicating that everything was fine, Momo fixed her gaze on the mother in front of her. I know I haven't given my part to the development of this relationship, he said, tightening his grip on the green-haired man's hand. What are you talking about, Momo? You? Izuku wanted to intervene. Let me speak, son, his mother told him, looking at him seriously and calmly. I'm also aware that you don't accept me as Izuku's partner, he said with trembling lips. Momo, the boy called him sadly, not being able to believe what he was hearing. But still, she swallowed hard. I'll make sure I'm worthy of her son. Why I love him, said the black-haired woman without shame and with determination. A smile formed on Inko's face, accompanied by a sigh of relief. That's what I wanted to hear, said the red-haired woman with a smile, getting up and turning to look at the kitchen shelf. Using her quirk to lure a small book to one of the highest places, the woman went unhurriedly to give the book to Momo, who was shocked and confused. "What is this?" I asked, noticing that the book didn't have a cover. "A book on how to be a good housewife. It is not a guide, it is a novel from a long time ago. My mother gave it to me and now I'll give it to you," he explained. "Thank you, Mrs. Midoriya," the black-haired woman genuinely thanked her. "Call Inko," the woman smiled happily. "Thank you, Inko," he smiled back. It wasn't a bad dinner, thought the black-haired woman. The best part was that they took home footing. The meaning of cooking. Never in her entire life would Ochako have imagined that cooking would be so deep. "You must understand the ingredients, feel them," Nijire guided him in a low voice. "Put yourself in their shoes, become an ingredient," she said, inspired. The chestnut's training had been worse than his days of exercise in high school. Cut 10 onions, peel huge and tiny potatoes to perfection, and remove the seeds from a jalapeno. They were just a few examples of the hell the girl had to go through. "And I wouldn't like to be a food," he said, trying not to lose concentration. Currently Nijire helped her friend meditate, unfortunately, as this was a training to learn to cook. Instead of incense, most used garlic to withstand the smell when preparing dishes. Although the girl had an excuse, garlic is almost always used in dressings. "And I can't stand it anymore," said Uraraka, beginning to float in the air. Sigh we were close. He got up to stretch and leave the exercise room that the chestnut had. "Can we rest?" "I'm sorry, I'm going to vomit." She lay exhausted in her armchair. "Oh well, and I was thinking of teaching you the secret so that your dishes come out all delicious," he said, heading for the exit. Flying in her friend's direction, Uraraka grabbed Nijire and threw her into the kitchen, then she floated in with a look of determination and a flame in her eyes. "I'm ready." La Castana positioned herself in front of the oven. Already dressed in an apron and a kitchen hat, she was prepared for anything. "Okay. Get everything ready to make yakisoba," the girl indicated, sitting on a chair in the middle of the kitchen. "Well," Uraraka replied firmly and bravely, although inside, her nerves were sky-high, fearing that she would set something on fire again. Putting all the ingredients on a board, the heroine had everything to start. The only thing she lacked was concentration, not thinking about anything but. "One last thing," Nijire pulled out of his thoughts. "You have to prepare this dish as if you were preparing it for a loved one," he explained. The girl turned to look at her friend, surprised. The smile she had indicated that she was not joking. A loved one? He wondered mentally. "They can be your parents' friends," Nijire began to give examples, "or lovers." I emphasized the last word. Ochako's cheeks turned red, just as she was going to use her parents' image as inspiration. The color green flooded his head. To even think that this dish would be for that special person filled him with determination. "I'll be back in a while, Luck." Her friend left the room, leaving her alone. Swallowing hard, the chestnut began to cook with the image of his best friend in mind. Surprisingly, Uraraka found himself enjoying what he was doing. She had never loved to cut and peel things like today before. There were times when the girl ended up laughing by herself, although in his heart he really is not. Time later. "I did it," said the surprised girl, contemplating with a twinkle in her eyes how good her dish looked. Nijire entered instantly and approached the brunette with her typical smile, opening her arms to hug her friend. Poor Uraraka ended up victim to another shockwave while being squeezed affectionately. "I congratulate you, Uraraka. Now it's time for you to try it." I pass him some chopsticks, who knows where I get them from. The heroine took a few seconds to accept the cutlery, still a little stunned by the great achievement she had made. Without saying a word, the chestnut gave a taste to the attractive dish. Her taste buds felt in the clouds. "It's delicious," he shouted with joy, touching his cheeks because of how good it tasted. "And it only took us a month." "Huh." She laughed as she watched her friend eat. "Tell me, Uraraka, what did you use as inspiration?" she asked curiously. Stopping her attack on the saucer, the brunette lowered her gaze, and her countenance fell instantly. Her heart was already used to this kind of pain, so the girl did not take long to respond. I thought of a friend, he replied with a muffled voice. Dasha, you must love it very much. What you did is proof of that. He gave the saucer another taste. Do you believe? Said the brunette with a somewhat sad smile. Is it someone I know? Maybe I can help you win her heart. Nijire looked at her mischievously. Or maybe you already did it. He has a girlfriend. The girl cut him off immediately. How her friend felt uncomfortable, and yet you used it as inspiration. He looks at her with pity. But it's okay, isn't it? As long as I can cook well. He turned to start cleaning his kitchen. Your dishes will taste good though. Nijire turned to look at her depressed friend. It's not healthy for your heart. I take him by the shoulder. And what am I supposed to do? I turn the brunette abruptly, ask him to leave his girlfriend so that we can escape together. Sarcasm in his voice. Don't worry. Nijire hugged her despite how rude she had sounded. What do you think if we do this? He saw him with confidence and purity. That night Ochako gained the determination to end her relationship problems once and for all. Nijire had a plan, and Uraraka was going to make good use of it. Wedding preparations. What if we rent a place? Kyuka suggested, sitting in her armchair with a pile of bridal gown magazines around her. And if it is better not? Kaminari answered with a question in the distance. It's not for nothing, love, but where could we get a good place? Explain. Aoyama is recommending me a whole list, he said while he saw on his cell phone how notifications rained down on him. Dasha. I almost forgot to invite him to my bachelor party. The blonde shouted from the bathroom. Sai, are you still with that? I ask, a little tired of having to listen to her partner talk about the same topic all day. I'm sorry. I can't help but not be excited. He approached the chair with a big smile. It's going to be electrifying. I create a few discharges in his palm. I just hope you don't control yourself, Denki, that's all. The violet-hairy girl saw him from the corner of her eyes. Honey *Psy *anarchy is the main element of a farewell, the boy explained, feeling cultured. The future husband ran his hand over Kyuka's shoulders, pulling her closer to him to make sure she heard what he was about to say. Well, Kaminari raised his other hand as if looking into the future. You could go if you asked me, whispered the blonde one maliciously. Imagine the possibilities, he said, overflowing with emotion. No thanks, I already have plans for that day, he said, moving away from the boy to continue reading. The confident and cheerful Kaminari paled, meaning that he already had plans? He asked himself, not wanting to believe what he had just heard. A cold drop passed down his throat. What do you mean by that? The blonde asked nervously. Wait a minute, the red-haired woman ignored her question, putting her cell phone to her ear. Satu? Hello. Speak up, Juru. I heard you had a pastry shoppin'. It must be a joke. The boy said mentally, if his girlfriend was really planning to do a bachelorette party like him, then things would get ugly. All the horrors that Kaminari had heard or read on the internet about women's bachelor parties ended in one. They cancelled the wedding or two. Thank you very much, friend. The invitations will arrive this afternoon or tomorrow at the latest. The girl continued talking on her cell phone. Are you sure you don't want to be part of my farewell? He asked tremblingly. I'm sure we'll have a good time together, he offered. Nah, I don't want to ruin your last night off, love, winked at her, starting to dial another number in her contacts. No problem. I bet her farewell will be boring anyway. She imagined the group of Kyuka's friends drinking tea. Probably things about girls that I'm sure you won't like, smiled the girl coquettishly, getting up from the armchair and retiring to her room. It can't be that bad. What's the worst that could happen? Between laughs? Hello. Izuku answered, his voice surprised by the number that called him. Aishido? I mentioned to him. Midoriya. Are you alone? I ask in a mischievous tone. The hairy one decided to play a little with the green hair. Because I urge her. Well, the red-haired man began to feel embarrassed, not wanting to sound rude by telling him to stop his advances. What do you say if we go out for a while? I'm sure Yayorozu wouldn't bother, the hairy woman continued to act. The boy's babbling was heard for a few seconds, and Mina swore that Izuku was steaming at this moment, moving his cell phone away to let out a loud laugh followed by a big sip from his bottle. The heroine cleared her throat to continue embarrassing the red-haired man. Who knows, maybe if I have a little action tonight, thought the girl, biting her lips. Dashwell? What do you say, Midori? I'm afraid that will never happen, Ashido replied, a different female voice than the green-haired one. If you only called to ask nonsense, then don't worry. Relax, Yaoyorozu. God, the hairy woman hurriedly spoke, feeling that they would hang up on her at any moment. It was a joke, okay? He smiled. An awkward silence formed between the two companions. Mina took the opportunity to take another sip from her bottle. On the other hand, Momo had a face of annoyance while she listened to her boyfriend tell her not to be so hairy. Dashwell? What did you call for? Asked the black-haired woman directly. Are you happy? I question her, being just as direct as her. By your relationship, I mean, I add. I am, the girl replied immediately. What is that question about? She felt curious. Nothing important, and exactly what achieves that happiness? He continued to question her. On the other side, Momo turned to look into her partner's eyes. Izuku stared at him, surprised for a few seconds. It didn't take long for him to give her a smile that would make the black-haired woman's heart race. I can't explain it, he replied with a smile. I guess you'll have to find out alone, Ashido, she said in a happy and serene voice. The call ended after the last thing her friend said. Although the black-haired woman had not said or explained anything to her, Mina felt that many of her doubts were cleared up. Taking another sip of her drink, the hairy woman realized that her bottle had already been emptied. A sigh of annoyance escaped her. Last call, he threw the bottle away. The girl began to look in her contacts for a certain little frog. The leader of the vigilantes. Here we are reporting from one of the business districts. A fire has gotten out of control, and the firefighters can't contain it, a reporter said. People watched in fear as the powerful flames began to consume the entire building. Police officers prevented people from getting closer than allowed. The efforts of the firefighters were in vain, the atmosphere was very tense, the building began to collapse little by little, and the worst thing was that I have just been told that there are still people trapped in the fire. Will we witness a sad scenario this afternoon? Said the man with sorrow. A shadow began to cover the reporter, and all the people turned to look at the sky, where a huge hawk flew over with elegance and intimidation. Coming from afar down the side of the street, a hero swayed from building to building in style, and from the shadows of all the people a human figure began to form. It's the Watchers! Ladies and gentlemen, the famous group of heroes has just arrived. The reporter said with hope on his face. Shouts of happiness and applause began to sound. Fumikage emerged with a dark shadow among the people, and Zero landed on a lamppost. We will make sure that the building does not collapse. You rescue the civilians inside, ordered the intimidating hero through an earpiece. Got it, replied Tsuyu, who was on top of the huge falcon with Kuda. While Zero used his quirk to prepare a trampoline for people to jump on, Dark Shadow held both sides of the building with his two huge limbs. With only the strength of its flapping wings, Kuda's hawk dispersed all the fire from the ceiling, allowing Tsuyu to enter to rescue the prisoners from the fire. The plan was a success. There were no casualties that afternoon, only a few burns and many, many applauses. The young group of heroes was surrounded by cameras and interviewers. Dark Shadow hid to avoid becoming small. How does it feel to be the most beloved group of heroes in town? Do you plan to create an alliance with other groups? Are you single, heroine Froppy? It was some of the thousands of questions they began to ask the group. Everyone felt flattered and even embarrassed in Kuda's case. It was already customary for the boys to be interviewed in this way after a great find. However, this time it was going to be different. Who is the leader of the group? Asked the reporter, looking seriously at the whole group. The UA graduates looked at each other for a few seconds. Zero and Fumikage looked defiant as if telling each other that he was the leader and that the other should step aside. Kuda tried to calm the nonverbal argument, leaving Tsuyu alone with the paparazzi. I suppose if we are talking about a leader, it is Tsuk. He meant the name of the crow's hero. It's you, of course. A reporter interrupted him. Who else could it be? Froppy, the leader of the vigilantes. Another followed. Zero and Fumikage stopped looking at each other to see disappointment as their partner monopolized all the attention. At least Mineta did not appear, they both thought, thankful that it wasn't the annoying little man who would represent them. "I'm sorry I have to go," stopped the interview that the little frog was doing with him, making a powerful jump to disappear between the roofs of the city. All the people applauded and whistled as they watched Froppy leave, olympically ignoring the other members of the group. "I'll go buy food, prepare the table as soon as I arrive," ordered the eldest in her family. "Ask Satsuki what he wants to eat," she asked. "And I don't have an opinion," his brother complained. "Not as long as I'm the leader," Tsuyu replied with a smile, remembering today's funny event. Just one more day in Froppy's life. The leader of the Watchers. Ida's disappointment. The morning began for Ingenium, the fastest hero in the entire city. The black-haired man got up like a robot from his bed, adjusted his robe, and went to prepare breakfast. With his cup of coffee in hand, the boy went out to pick up his newspaper and check his correspondence. A look of surprise formed on his face when he saw that in his mail there was a very well-decorated letter. Putting on surgical gloves, the black-haired man carefully took the letter, gave it a quick glance, and even gave it a sniff before returning home. The seal of the letter was a musical theme, something that I missed the boy a lot. Without wasting any more time, Ida opened the envelope with blunt scissors, and her eyes almost bulged out when she saw what the letter was about. "Be wedding?" stuttered incredulously the black-haired one. "Kaminari? Jairu?" He continued reading. Taking off his glasses and then cleaning them until they shined, the boy began to read the letter tremblingly. Each word seemed to terrify him more, not the fact that his companions were going to get married. On that side, Ida was happy for them. The problem was that one of the requirements to attend the wedding was, "I go with F partner?" I shout, cursing his luck. "No." His cry was heard throughout the neighborhood. The moons of his teeth broke and his teeth began to grind. Using his quirk to speed to his home phone, the black-haired man began to search his contact book for all his female acquaintances. Truly, I had the worst of luck. It would be a disgrace to be the only one in the class without a partner. Full-speed page turning. Obviously he was not the only one, but Ida doubted that Bakugu or Todoroki would mind attending alone. Although there was also the possibility that they both had a partner, the boy no longer knew what to think. First he had to solve his problems, and then he would analyze the rest. "Damn," he said, squeezing the phone. Desperation was taking hold of him. Her first choice was Uraraka. Since they were both friends, the black-haired man thought that there would be no misunderstandings or problems in inviting her. However, the brunette did not answer the phone. "I will not give up," the boy shouted, filling himself with determination, turning the pages in his book even faster, and dialing at the speed of light. "Hello? Ida?" Hagakure replied. "I'm sorry to bother you, Hagakure. But I'd like to know if you wanted to be my partner for this weekend's wedding," I asked, full of hope. Well, the girl took her time to answer. "I'm sorry Ida Mashireo invited me first," he said sadly. The black-haired man hung up immediately and did not continue wasting time. Ashido said that he already had a partner and even told him his name, Sake. Tsuyu said that now he had to think about it between 3 proposals, counting his. Ida was left kneeling and defeated in front of his phone. Through his mind, the black-haired man was already imagining the worst scenarios that would happen to him. All his companions looking at him with contempt while he was at the wedding alone. Kirishima hugging a sobbing Jairu who kept repeating that his perfect wedding had been ruined. Ida would sacrifice herself for her companions, for everyone. "I wouldn't go to the wedding and avoid a tasting." Ring ring. His eyes locked on his phone. For a moment, the black-haired man thought he was dreaming. Could it be that there was someone who was in the same circumstances as him? Or maybe it was just a call from her mother to tell her how much failure it was for her. Whatever the occasion, the boy swallowed hard and answered with trembling hands, ready for the worst. "Hello?" greeted the black-haired man. "Ingenium, right?" Hatsum speaks. The best creative hero in the whole city. The hairy one introduced herself. It took him a few seconds to remember who he was talking to. That voice brought back memories of how it was used as an instrument in his first year of high school. "You're the girl who humiliated me at the festival." I accuse him, remembering who he was. "Exactly." She agreed, sounding unaffected. Today I received an invitation to a wedding, and I read that I needed to go with a couple so dash. Was there no one else? Of all the people he knew, did he have to be the crazy inventor who used him as a pawn? Ida felt small and disappointed. Once again, he would have to put his honor aside for the sake of his companions. Dash, I accept. See you later. The black-haired man shouted through tears, hanging up immediately and then falling on his knees to the ground and giving a gasp. Was today the day to destroy Ingenium? Bakubro. Dash, what? The blonde saw the letter in his hands with annoyance. What the fuck is this? He roared angrily. The day was just beginning, and they were already ruining it. Katsuki resisted the urge to burn the fancy card in his hands because all the damn requirements had to choose one as silly as having a partner for assistance. That was one of the thousands of questions that the boy asked himself while looking at the letter with hatred. That idiot face, murmured the blonde man, imagining Kaminari with a triumphant smile. Surely he did it on purpose? He gnashed his teeth. Deciding that beating his partner to death would solve nothing, Bakugo decided to take a few tries to see if anyone among his contacts would agree to be his partner for that weekend's ceremony. But first, I answer nerd. He put his cell phone in his ear. Deku, did you get the damn invitation letter? He asked immediately as soon as they answered. Dash, Kaken. Be good morning. Ah, well, if you mean Jairu's wedding invitation. And, do you get shit or not? The blonde was to the point, not wanting to hear his rival babble. Yes, replied the green-haired man like a soldier. Some murmurs could be heard in the background. You plan to go with your girlfriend, aren't you? He continued to question him. Dashed up. Wait a minute. Izuku apologized for a few seconds. Yaoyorozu's voice could be heard in the distance. Visit. Pathetic, Bakugo said while waiting with annoyance. A few seconds later, the red-haired man spoke again. Dashways. Momo agreed to go, so he began to explain. I'll see you at the damn wedding. And don't think I won't go alone because I don't have a nerdy partner. The blonde hung up annoyed. Marking with hatred on his cell phone, the boy muttered under his breath how much he hated a certain redhead and how annoying it was to have to do this. Dash, Kirishima. You said you'd introduce me to some friends of yours? He reminded him without losing his character for a moment. Tell me what damn time I have to go. Who will you take as a couple? Dash, Shuto. His sister called him from the living room. You have correspondence. Inform. The half-ice and fire arrived in the room after a few seconds. His entire body was covered in bandages, and only his eyes were visible. Aizawa would have been proud. Taking the letter that his older sister passed him, the boy was surprised to see that the paper was elegant and musically themed. It can't be, he said, exaggerating as he read the contents of it. His eyes widened, and his bandages began to turn to ashes. Is it a bad thing? Her sister asked, surprised. You have my fan club number, right? I ask in a defeated voice. If so, what do you want? I ask, hoping that his brother has not become a masochist. I need a partner, said Shuto with a serious face. The day of judgment was approaching for them. I repeat that it is not necessary to read what is below. Uraraka trembles in fear as she sees her plate of food move. Azui watches his brother asleep on the food table. Kyoka now looks brightly at wedding-themed invitations. Ida fumes from how fast she writes. Itsuka covers her blushing face with her giant hands. Todoroki bends down to tie his shoes, but they burn. Hatsum holds a screwdriver with his face dirty from an explosion. Nijire is now holding a carrot. Hagakure hugs a small teddy bear toy. Ojiro walks faster, as if he were fleeing. Momo holds a hand exhaler in amazement. Izuku holds up a briefcase of teachers. Bakugo washes his dirty dishes wildly. Midnight continues to stroke his whip. Ashido now drinks from the bottle. This is your house? The red-haired man asked nervously, intimidated by the mansion in front of him. That's right, it's still the same as last time, commented the black-haired woman, taking her time to analyze her old home. Since the young couple's visit to Izuku's mother, Momo's attitude towards their relationship had changed dramatically, and the girl began to treat her boyfriend as a wife would treat her beloved husband. And even though they're not married, Izuku could feel the air of familiarity that his partner was starting to create in their apartment. And now, at her request, Izuku would have lunch with his mother. So, he made a gesture to get the attention of his companion. "Didio, you think Emi will accept me?" she asked, opening her arms to let herself be seen. "She already knows you, not in person of course, but I did show him some pictures of you, and I also told him about you a little," said the girl with a trembling smile. More than necessary finished her sentence in her mind, the black-haired woman. It would be embarrassing to tell her that her mother knew a lot about Izuku, not exactly everything, of course. The private and intimate things they shared were an example, discarding that their mother had abundant knowledge about their relationship and had even more information about her partner. It was Momo's fault that he got carried away and ended up describing the red-haired man in detail. "You think I should behave formally?" the boy questioned worriedly. "It's not an obligation, although if you want to leave a good impression," he approached to fix his tie. "You could bring out your elegant side," he smiled at her. Once his tie was fixed, the couple shared a quick kiss before ringing the luxurious doorbell. Seconds later, a butler came to greet them. Momo's face lit up with joy when she saw the old man. Apparently the man had been serving the heroine's family for years, and the black-haired woman was happy to see him after a while. Izuku only watched with a smile as his partner chatted for a few minutes with the eldest. After politely introducing the grandfather, the two were escorted by the old man to the huge mansion in front of them. The green-haired man looked wonderfully at the huge garden that his girlfriend had, to the point of looking more like a forest than a simple yard. "They are oak plantations," reported his winged, black-haired woman. "I helped plant some," he said proudly. "They look magnificent," the boy said with a smile, hugging her over his shoulder and pulling her to him. "I'm glad to see that you made a good choice in your partner, miss," the charismatic butler congratulated him. Momo let out a giggle while Izuku just smiled, slightly embarrassed by the old man's compliment. The mansion was much larger up close than from afar. The beauty of its structures as well as those detailed at the entrance were worthy of being called works of art. The green-haired man knew that his partner was of the high class, but this was already too much. "Yes, your house is beautiful," he said, feeling intimidated by so much elegance. "Right?" The black-haired woman looked at him tenderly, clinging even more to her partner's arm. As with the old butler, upon entering the mansion, an old woman greeted them with a smile, and Momo received the well-known maid's embrace with affection. The old lady also gave Izuku a big hug upon discovering that this was the partner of her precious Momo. Unfortunately, the green-haired man had to endure the deadly stretching of cheeks by the rejuvenated old woman. "What a good husband you chose, miss. I am sure that your heirs will be adorable." He patted Izuku on the back. "We haven't taken the big step yet," replied the black-haired woman, a little red, affected by her caregiver's words. "And what are you waiting for? Men like that are not found every day." "Huh," the old woman commented charismatically. "Men like me?" the boy whispered confused to his girlfriend. "It's a compliment. That's how she is," Momo explained in the same way. The couple was now guided by the old lady, who took her time to pass through the different important corridors of the mansion. Izuku was stunned by the amount of history that the Yayorozu family had. Momo told him like a professional summarized legends about each important member of his family. The red-haired man knew how much he liked to teach his girlfriend, so he made sure to ask for details and curiosities. "And next to my grandfather, this is my father," said the black-haired woman with a more muted tone, her face saddened. "You don't have to talk if you don't want him," the boy recommended, noting that it could be painful to talk to him about him. "Okay, it will be a short description. I look up to see the red-haired man with a smile. "Oh, your father would be proud of you, miss, I assure you," commented the old woman, seeing how difficult it was for her mistress to remember her father. Respected, feared, and envied by the people around him, but loved and cherished by his family. That's how his girlfriend described him. Izuku never had a father to raise him as a child, so he could not empathize with what he told him about his childhood. However, the boy understood how much it must have hurt Momo to lose him. When All Might died, Izuku felt as if he had lost a friend, mentor, and father. "I would have liked to have met him," said the red-haired man, contemplating the huge portrait of his father, who had black hair like his daughter. He would have liked to meet you too, his partner said with a melancholy smile, taking his hand while looking at the huge painting. Because of his shyness and anxiety, Izuku did not show signs of affection in public. However, the moment merited it. Affectionately hugging his girlfriend, the green-haired man gave her a warm kiss on her forehead, hoping that Momo would stop feeling sorrow and sadness. The feeling of his delicate arms wrapping around him and his face hiding in his chest confirmed that his actions paid off. "It's true what they say that women look for someone who looks like their father," said the old woman, moving and with teary eyes. "You are equal to the master when it comes to family. I compare them." The young couple laughed a little at the words of the eldest. With Momo's spirits back, the duo was prepared for the meeting that awaited them in the dining room of the mansion. Izuku knew that he shouldn't feel nervous about meeting his girlfriend's mother, even so. Before entering, spoke to the black-haired woman, "My mother is, I try to explain myself." The doors of the huge dining room suddenly opened, revealing a mature woman with a big smile on her face. "I've been waiting for you," said the woman with overflowing joy. Quite extroverted, the girl finished her sentence. That morning Izuku discovered that his girlfriend had brought out his mother's appearance and perhaps her sensitive side regarding rudeness. Otherwise, the green-haired man was completely sure that the rest was taken from his father. It should be noted that that day Izuku and Momo ended up sleeping in the mansion with no option to return to their apartment, all thanks to the generosity of his girlfriend's mother, who seemed to be enjoying their stay too much. Setting the stage. Today had been a great day for Izuku. Absolutely everything was wonderful. No paparazzi or media questioning him about his relationship with Creati, his crazy fans did not show up, and best of all, no casualties in his hero's craft. The good mood was noticeable in the green-haired man, who walked with a smile and greeted happily the receptionist and staff of the hotel where he lived with his partner. The elevator doors opened for him, saving him the work of pushing buttons and waiting. Apparently, his good mood also affected his surroundings. The vibration of his cell phone in his pocket took him out of his rhythm a little, although it did not affect him much being in a good mood. "Hello Deku. How are you?" laughed his best friend and cause of the green-haired man's good mood. "I'm very well. Today was a good day, wasn't it?" He couldn't help but remind her of how much fun he had with her. "It's nothing. That's what friends are for, right?" said the brunette just as animated. Ochako had played the guardian angel for the green-haired man this day, helping him evade the paparazzi, secretly taking care of his fans, and collaborating with him in his work as a hero. The brunette was more than happy to know that thanks to her, Izuku was able to have a quiet and relaxed weekend, unlike those tedious and stressful days she always had. Although there was still one last surprise. "I really thank you for everything you did today. What do you think if we go out with Ida tomorrow? Like in the old days?" The red-haired man offered happily. "Tempting, although there is a problem," he said with a dramatic C accent. "What would you do with these 3 concert tickets?" I asked melodiously. "You mean ES Love Sentence concert this Saturday?" Izuku asked tremblingly. "Exactly," said the brunette, amused. Uraraka and Nijire heard a cry of excitement from the green-haired man. Things were going exactly as her friend had planned. "Talk to Ida, and it seems that he will be busy at the time of the concert, so I decided to ask another acquaintance of ours," explained the girl maliciously. The brunette was telling the truth. Apparently Ida had a kind of date with an acquaintance from high school, although the way she told her made her think that the date was more of a punishment. "A moment, Momo is calling me." He put the call on hold. "Hello. I thought you were already in the apartment," I answer. "I'm on my way. Did Uraraka tell you about tomorrow?" Momo spoke happily. "I was going to buy tickets for both of them, but apparently he beat me to it." "Momo!" The red-haired man shouted internally, wondering why of all his acquaintances he would invite his girlfriend to the concert. Izuku was more than sure that Uraraka and his girlfriend didn't have the best of friendships, although maybe I'm exaggerating things, thought the boy. "Izuku? You're murmuring," the black-haired woman warned him from the other side. "I'll bring something for dinner, don't prepare anything, okay?" he said before hanging up. When her boyfriend got like this, it was better for her to be next to him than to try to bring him back to reality on a cell phone. It was something that Momo had learned during the time she lived with him. "Deku? Are you okay? Achiko asked, who was surprised to hear her friend murmur. Coming out of the trance he was in, Izuku realized that Momo had already hung up on him a few seconds ago, giving way to the pending call he had with his brunette friend. I'm sorry, Uraraka. I got lost in thought, he apologized embarrassedly. No problem, what coincidence, Yaoyorozu, I don't tell you about some concert? The girl asked ironically, holding back a few giggles. Yes, if he did it, he replied surprised. I didn't think you'd invite her to her, he said worriedly. Well, since they've been dating for a while now, I thought it would be nice if the three of us went out together. Now you could join our group. Explain. The reasons her friend gave her made sense. Her friendly personality had always brought her good friends in high school. Uraraka was like that, and Izuku had no reason to think badly of her. I see, smiled a little calmer with the explanation that her friend gave her. See why you tomorrow then, he said goodbye. See you tomorrow. He hung up the chestnut. Ochako let out a sigh of relief. Her winged friend put a hand on her shoulder, as if trying to tell her that all this was for her good. The girl couldn't keep hurting herself. The best thing was to solve the problem once and for all. There is nothing to worry about. I'll be there if things get out of hand, Nijire said with a smile. The brunette was very grateful to her friend. If it weren't for her constant advice, Ochako probably would have spent her entire life lamenting about her love life. The blue-haired woman had taken the trouble to create a plan to help her overcome the feelings she had for the green-haired man. If everything went according to what she explained to her, by tomorrow night Deku will be just a friend. Are you sure? I don't want to bother you with all this anymore. I mean, you've already done enough for me, said the brunette sadly. Piff, I'm not doing this for free. He began to laugh as he spoke. You're going to owe me a lot of favors later. Malice in his tone of voice. I should have guessed it. The girl let out a few nervous giggles. Even so, although the strategy formulated by the blue and white was formidable, failure was a factor that was always present. Just thinking that Yaoyorozu and Deku would end up angry with her frightened him. Why, if I fail, do you think that Deku will stop being my friend? I asked hesitantly. I don't know, Nijire replied instantly and without losing her smile. You're her best friend, aren't you? How do you think he would react? Wonder. He laughed as he imagined how his friend would react. He is very good, probably not even bother, said the brunette with a smile. Then there's nothing to worry about. The blue-haired woman hit her on the back, sending her friend against the wall. Yes, I suppose not, replied Uraraka tremblingly. She had already gotten a little used to this kind of affection. She couldn't fail. She couldn't afford that luxury. Tomorrow, Ochako Uraraka would finally get over her love for Deku or stop being called Uravity. And she would also become friends with Yaoyorozu, maybe. Fidos. Which really means to love. Yes? Mina? Tsuyu replied with his indecipherable tone of voice. Hello Azui. How are you? Asked the hairy girl happily. The alcohol was beginning to make her more jumping and playful. Well, a little tired, but well, answered the little frog. What about you? Calling at midnight is not very common, I ask. Oh yes. He called to ask. He stopped to try to remember what he was going to say. Why remarried, aren't you? Asked the hairy one. I'm not, replied her friend, surprised. Right? I thought you were. I always see you with 2 children next to you, recalled the girl. They're my little brothers, Tsuyu replied, confused. You're drunk, aren't you? He began to suppose. A little sigh. I had a long night, you know. His tone of voice dropped. Apparently everyone found their better half, he said heavily. Unless you, Tsuyu finished his sentence, you know if you want, you can come to my house. Tomorrow is Saturday, so I invite her, feeling her friend's sadness. No thanks, I only called to ask. He prepared himself for a few seconds. You don't have a partner either? How come you don't feel alone? Wonder. Some tears escaped the hairy girl. Her voice also broke for a few seconds. Mina hoped that her friend had not noticed. Everyone loves and has someone who loves them except us, and yet you don't seem to be affected at all by the sniff dam, I explain. You don't have to have a partner to feel loved or to love Mina, said the little frog. I have people I love, and they are not necessarily a couple, she explained. Trying to stop the torrent of tears in her eyes, Mina listened sadly to her friend's words. Of all people, Tsuyu was the most mature and wise. She could always remind him of the right path. You should visit your family for a while. I assure you that you will feel more love than you expect, the frog recommended. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have called, said the hairy woman, sobbing, sorry that her friend has to listen to her in her current state. It's okay, Tsuyu comforted her, imagining herself hugging and caressing Mina's back. That night Mina discovered that love was not something one had to feel out of obligation to a boyfriend or partner. Her friend had reminded her that there were different ways to love and be loved. One of those ways was friendship. I'm going to go, Kaminari warned his partner, hoping that his girlfriend would change her mind and accompany him. See you later. I love you, Kyuka shouted from her room, saying goodbye to her future husband. Sigh I love you too, said the blonde in a low voice, opening the door of his apartment to go to the meeting point. Even though Kaminari was about to go to his long-awaited bachelor party, his mind didn't leave him at ease. What if Jiro drank too much? And if some jerk tried something? A few rays emanated from his body. And the worst of all, if something happened to him in his future state of drunkenness? How someone about to get engaged wouldn't fear such thoughts? It's the worst of times to start thinking about the possible scenarios that your girlfriend will experience. Now she should be ready to have fun and have a good time with her friends even so. The ringtone of his cell phone made the boy return to reality, although a sigh of sadness escaped the blonde when he remembered that the song fascinated his girlfriend. Yes? Who speaks? Kaminari asked reluctantly. Like, who's talking? It's me, Mineta. His friend shouted reluctantly. Midoriya and Bakugo are already here. Only you and Todoroki are missing. Notice. I am sorry, I'm on my way, the blonde apologized melancholy. All right, brother? Asked the little man. You sound like a worried mother, he joked. It's Jiro just that's explained the boy. Were you angry about the farewell? He questioned. If so, there is nothing to worry about. As long as he doesn't find out what we do, he explained. It's not that I'm worried that something will happen to him in his farewell, he expressed his annoyance. While he was a good friend of hers, they had always kept in touch with each other, even when he finished high school. Their friendship could be quite frowned upon by others because of how perverted they behaved when they were together. Even so, the two had been together for so long that they even considered each other brothers. Why don't you come first and then talk about it? His friend spoke seriously, noticing the discomfort he had. Okay, the blonde nodded, entering the elevator with his mind still clouded by negative thoughts. Girls united. Although the violet-haired woman enjoys the company of her partner, anyone who has spent so much time without an apartment for it would be behaving in the same way as Jiro. And that was playing his bass on the armchairs with the music at maximum volume. This is life, shouted the girl full of energy, jumping from armchair to armchair without caring about anything. Singing to the rhythm of the music, the hairy girl kicked the cushions as if she were a rock star. The girl got so carried away that she threw herself into an imaginary audience without any fear. The pain of the blow didn't bother her at all. The heroine began to make cushion angels on the floor. Jiro's soul had become free and wild. Knock knock. I'm going, shouted the violet-haired girl without losing her attitude, getting up and running to open the door of her apartment. Among her friends, they decided that they would first meet at Jiro's apartment. Knowing that Kaminari would leave, the girl accepted without problems. And now her first guest had just arrived. The violet-haired girl was eager to start her farewell once and for all. Azui. The violet-haired woman greeted him happily, throwing herself into her friend's arms in an affectionate embrace. Hello, Jiro. The frog received the hug a little surprised. It was strange to see so much affection from her friend. I thought you would be the last one. You're always busy and that, said the girl, shaking her head from side to side. I was a little lucky, Tsuyu explained, entering the apartment when he saw that the violet-haired woman was moving aside. I'm glad you came so early because he disappeared from the frog's sight for a few seconds. I was about to start. Shout. The newcomer saw how her friend left her room with 2 bottles of punch in her hands. A big goofy smile adorned the illuminated face of the violet-haired woman. I'm thirsty and you? he said, lifting the bottles and shaking them enthusiastically. Alcohol was not Tsuyu's favorite drink. The girl was completely inexperienced in this aspect. However, it was a special occasion, so, "Do you have a glass?" I asked with a smile. Meanwhile, with super friends, "Why the fuck is it taking so long?" Bakugo asked desperately and furiously. "I don't know." He said he was on his way. Mineta replied, who was beginning to worry. "Wouldn't it be better if we called him?" Izuku suggested, trying to find a solution. He doesn't answer. The little man spoke tiredly. What the hell was Kaminari thinking about? He wondered. The group was in one of the desolate alleys of the city. The reason? They were heroes. To make matters worse, two of them were quite popular, Mineta, not much. And with the soon arrival of Todoroki, now the top 3 of the ranking of the best heroes would be gathered. A great commotion would be formed if they were walking through the streets of the city as if nothing had happened. "Hello everyone," Todoroki greeted, calling the attention of the 3 boys. Todoroki. "It's good to see you." The green-haired man approached him to greet him, shaking his hand kindly. Likewise, Midoriya Bakugo fixed his gaze on the blonde leaning against one of the walls. "What's damned?" the explosive boy greeted him in his way. Your fans aren't following you, are they?" Mineta questioned skeptically. His partner's crazy fans were the last thing they needed. "I made sure they didn't follow me," Stoto replied firmly, remembering everything he had to do so that they wouldn't bother him tonight. Flashback. "I request an audience with your leader," said an elegantly dressed Shoto. There was only one way for his pursuers to leave him alone for even one night, and the boy was willing to do everything humanly possible to achieve his goal. That included going to their stalker's headquarters, which, by the way, was an exact replica of his house. "Shoto Todoroki, #1 hero in the ranking and in our hearts," said a melodious voice inside the Japanese house. The hero swallowed hard. All the preparation he made for this moment was crumbling. Little by little, the leader of his fan club approached him. The young woman's perverted smile would be something any man would envy to see, though Shoto was not just any man. "What is the reason for your visit?" she asked, surrounding him seductively. "I want to ask for a favor." The boy spoke nervously, feeling that at any moment he would be riddled with sleeping darts. "What kind of favor?" I asked him, approaching his idol's ear. "I need you to give me a night off," asked the half-ice and fire tremblingly. "In exchange for what?" The young woman stood in front of the boy, her arms crossed and her serious look. "I'll let them be my partner for a day." Flashback. Todoroki? Izuku called him for the 3rd time. His hands moved in front of his friend's face, but he did not react. I am sorry. I remembered something," he said, feeling a chill pass through his body. Half and half bastard, have you already got a partner?" Bakugo asked, staring at him. "Yes," replied the boy with a darkened look. The blonde began to growl and murmur after Shoto's answer. None of them took much importance since it was normal for the boy to do that. "I'm sorry for the delay," spoke a new voice. "You're finally here." Kirishima called and said, "Everyone is waiting for us." Mineta said, annoyed, "Idiot face, why the fuck did you take so long?" The blonde asked furiously, taking him by his shirt aggressively. "I was thinking," he replied without being one bit frightened by Bakugo's attitude. "Is everything okay, Kaminari?" Izuku questioned, noticing that the blonde didn't look at his best. "Stop crying, Kaminari. If she has fun, why don't you?" Mineta commented. "Come on, my car is on the other street." He began to mobilize. "You mean that truck?" Pointed to the huge white Shoto vehicle. "Beautiful, don't you think?" said the little man proudly as he put on a pair of night glasses. "I want to go backwards," Bakugo said with a terrifying smile. The excitement was beginning to take hold of him. Izuku began to worry about his partner. According to what Mineta said, Kaminari was worried about his girlfriend's farewell. The green-haired man didn't understand why the blonde had to feel that way. Momo had told him about Jiro's farewell, and Jiro never felt afraid or worried about what his partner would do. He trusted her and vice versa, but with Kaminari. Kaminari? Izuku called him. "Are you worried about what happens at Jiro's farewell?" Wonder. Yes. "How did you know?" The blonde asked him startled, stopping halfway there, leaving only him and the green-haired man in the alley. Well, Momo told me a little about it, revealed the boy a little embarrassed. Jiro also invited her, nerves in his voice. And you're not worried about what they do? The blonde continued to ask him. And no, not really, he replied, a little intimidated by the way his partner approached him. That he trusted Momo. Yes, I know that she will control her. I hope that his words change his friend's mood. Denki sighed tiredly. He knew he was worrying too much. Even Midoriya, the king of anxiety and nerves, was calm with his girlfriend going to that farewell, even if, let's be honest, Momo was drunk. Never in his life. Kyuka, on the other hand, you're right, although still, under his sad gaze, the blonde kicked a can near him. Seeing his partner so sad caused Izuku a lot of grief. Normally, Kaminari was characterized by being cheerful and joking with others. He was like the spark of the group back in high school. Nothing compared to the boy who was in front of him. Maybe there's something I can do for the... I ask how things are going, would you feel better? Offered as a good altruist the red-haired man. A ray of light began to illuminate the darkened face of the blonde, forcing him to look up to see what the origin of that light of hope was. Really? He couldn't believe what his friend was saying. Can you do that? Question. Of course. I just have to call Momo, and the blonde stopped him by the shoulders. Do it, he said earnestly and determinedly. Do it, please. Some tears threatened to come out. Okay, only give me a few seconds. The green-haired man hurriedly took out his cell phone. Momo had arrived about 5 minutes ago, and already 3 of her friends were in a deplorable state. I'm just saying Hikyu that I wish the idiot was more romantic, you know? The violet-haired woman complained aloud. Sniff Mashareo still hasn't declared himself Sniff to me. We've already had about 5 dates and still nothing. Tears fell like waterfalls from the invisible girl. The drink is running out. I need more. Azui asked more, throwing the bottle away. Thank heaven it was plastic. They're having fun, don't you think? Heat commented Uraraka next to him. His smile was warm as always. Yes, I suppose so, the black-haired woman replied a little confused. Apparently everyone was having a good time except her and the brunette. Momo wondered if she should also start drinking uncontrollably like her friends. Maybe this is a tradition of farewells? He wondered mentally. Aren't you going to drink? Asked the chestnut winged by him. I have a bad experience with this thing with drinks, but today is a special day, so I raise a glass full of punch. The girl remembered well that in Uraraka High School she ended up with a terrible hangover after that end-of-semester party. Maybe that was what she was referring to. I don't know, I promised Izuku that I wouldn't drink much. The black-haired woman recalled her promise. Momo noticed how her friend tensed up a little and moved far enough away when she mentioned the green-haired man. I would take note not to speak of him again in front of the chestnut. I bet he also promised something similar, right? She laughed, trying not to seem affected by the mention of her old crush. Yes, that's how he is, he said, remembering the image of the red-haired man. Just thinking about him made him smile. They're talking about Midoriya, aren't they? Tsuyu joined them in the conversation, approaching the pair with a new bottle of punch. It seemed that the conversation of the 2 girls had attracted the attention of the whole group. All those present stared at them with a gleam of curiosity in their eyes. I am sorry, this meeting was supposed to be for Jiro and me's celebration. Tell me something, you too. I point to the violet-haired woman sitting in one of the armchairs in front. How much do you see Midoriya? Question. Yes. The only redeemable thing I see in him is his tenderness and physique. Hagakure commented. Apparently she was also pointing at them. Why don't you explain the reason, Yaoyorozu? Who else but his girlfriend to get us out of this doubt? The frog hugged him on the shoulder. But if you liked it too, said the black-haired woman mentally, remembering that Azui had feelings for Izuku in high school. So? Kyuka pressed him, taking a long sip from his bottle. Where could I start? Her partner had so many qualities that she couldn't say just one: loyal, brave, altruistic, tenacious, and the list went on. If there was one word that would define him perfectly, it would be a hero, said Uraraka and Momo in unison, both turning to look at each other in surprise. I'm sorry you were delaying, so I thought I'd say something, the brunette apologized embarrassedly. No. It is okay. You don't have to apologize. The black-haired woman hurriedly spoke. I have no idea what hick you are talking about, said Kyuka. So let's get back to drinking. He began to drink from the same bottle. The three drunk girls went back to their business, leaving the black-haired brunette in silence. An air of tension formed between them. Neither of them was ready to talk, thanks to the embarrassing scene before. It was already uncomfortable for both of them to have to see each other knowing the history they both had with Izuku. Bus. Excuse me for a moment. The girl withdrew elegantly, seeing that it was the green-haired man who was calling her. Going into the bathroom to try to slow down how loud the music sounded, Momo sighed deeply before answering. Izuku. I mention it in the form of a greeting. Hello. I know this is going to sound weird, but the voices of his friends can be heard in the background. Could you tell me how things are going in there? Wonder. The black-haired woman could notice the way her boyfriend talked. It was not normal and sounded forced. Maybe one of the boys was forcing him to spy? Whatever the reason, Momo couldn't find any reason not to tell him what the red-haired man asked of him, so he began to tell him. I see, said the red-haired man, sounding a little nervous. There were a few seconds of silence between the two. The voices from the other end of the call seemed to whisper something to Izuku. The girl decided not to pay much attention to it. Yamamo. Kaminari spoke now. He probably took his boyfriend's cell phone. I need you to do something for me, determination in his voice. Of course, he replied, not understanding much of the situation he was in. Make sure Kyuka doesn't do anything stupid, you understand? It sounded more like an order than a request. You don't have to worry, Kaminari. Everything is going very well despite the state they are in, I inform him. The thunderous sound of glass breaking was heard throughout the apartment. Huh? Said the blonde ironically, not believing him at all. Just take a look at it, is it okay? He asked a little more calmly. Well, the black-haired woman promised. Sorry for that. Kaminari looked so dejected that Izuku tried to explain himself. Don't worry, the girl said softly. Now she knew how to help her partner when he became very anxious. Even so, I wish you didn't have to worry about anything tonight, the red-haired man spoke more calmly. Even if Kaminari hadn't asked him anyway, he wouldn't have let Jiro do something stupid, he said in an attempt to make him see that it wasn't his fault. Really? Well then, I try to find a reason to blame myself, Izu. Just have fun, okay? I'll be fine, I promise you, the girl spoke warmly. Okay, I love you, he said in a low voice, probably so that the others would not hear him. Just like me, said the black-haired woman, hanging up and sighing with a smile. Leaving the bathroom with her spirits back, Momo was happy to see that the glass that had been broken was a simple glass that they were not even using. Uraraka already took care of cleaning it. Her three friends were still having a good time with each other, although there was something missing, someone to be exact. Does anyone know where Shido is? She asked, genuinely surprised that she didn't see the hairy woman anywhere. I was also wondering why he wasn't with us. She is not one of those who ignore this type of activity, Uraraka replied from the kitchen. The chestnut was right. When it came to parties, the hairy one was the first to arrive or volunteer to bring drinks. It was extremely rare not to see her at the farewell. They are right. Hick, where is the rose? Kyuka demanded, rising from the ground next to his bottle. Didn't you tell him? So you spoke. She said she was going to the boys' farewell. He revealed. To that of the boys? Momo wondered mentally, why was he going to the boys' farewell? Was there a reason why the hairy girl would rather be with the boys than with them? Something was not right. Why the hell did he go to the farewell of those fools? The violet-haired woman asked, annoyed. I remember him telling me something about having a good time. The ways you said it sounded something vulgar. The black-haired woman's mind was racing 1,000 miles an hour, trying to interpret what her friend had just said. Momo was completely sure that Ashido preferred to drink in the company of women than men. It didn't make sense for him to go to the boys' farewell unless. We have to go look for her. She must be rescued from that hell of steroids and sweat. Kyuka shouted determinedly. We could take the opportunity to go get drinks. Ashido gave me the address of the nightclub where the boys would go, Azui suggested. Dashe. Let's go find Mashireo. Hagakure shouted excitedly. Momo exchanged glances with Uraraka. The two of them seemed to feel that something was not right. Liberate. Increase the speed, little. Bakugu shouted full of adrenaline, raising his hands in the air while he felt the wind on his face. Don't shout so much, idiot. You want us to be discovered, or worse, arrest us. Mineta scolded him, driving as fast as he could. Turn up the volume, I have nothing to fear anymore. Kaminari shouted in the same way, howling as he felt free of worries. Like a good co-pilot, Todoroki put him on the radio with a smile. Even he felt excited about what awaited them the night. In the back of the pickup, Bakugu and Kaminari were like crazy, enjoying the speed and fresh air. Izuku, on the other hand, let's go, Midoriya. Take a little risk. Mina encouraged him, pulling him by his clothes so that he would release the support to which he was clinging like a cat. I don't think it's a good idea. Ashido spoke tremblingly to the green-haired man. 10. It will help you relax a little, he smiled genuinely. Since there was little light through the tunnel they were passing through, Izuku didn't notice the kind of concoction Mina was inviting him. He knew it was alcohol but had no idea how strong it would be. Cough Q, what is this? Asked the boy with disgust. His throat burned like hell and his head seemed to have just been hit. For an anvil. It's my favorite drink. Do you like me? The hairy woman asked happily. Not much, lied the green-haired man. It tasted horrible. Why head feels horrible, he said, putting a hand to his forehead. You'll get used to it. Let's go, raise your arms. The girl took his hand. This time Izuku did not resist. Apparently the drink had magically taken away the fear and terror of falling down the road to the green-haired. Now he felt unsuspecting. Haha. He laughed when he felt how the wind passed with force over his face. It was a unique experience. I told you so, said the hairy girl between giggles, giving herself the confidence to intertwine her fingers with the boy and raise both hands in the air. Izuku ignored her friend's strange act and decided to continue enjoying the great sensation of adrenaline, even though her head was starting to get a little dizzy. Bakuga began to create small explosions that left a trail of smoke on the road, and Kaminari launched small beams that lit up the sky. Even Todoroki stuck his hand out of the window to create a flame in his palm that, like the explosive boy, left a trail of flames. With the newfound confidence he had, Izuku activated his quirk and hit with great force behind the truck. The vehicle had a speed rush that gave everyone goosebumps, but in a good way. Nothing bad, nerd. Ecstatic river of adrenaline Bakugu. That's the Midoriya spirit. Kaminari flattered him. I admit it, it felt great, I hear Todoroki say. More careful, idiot. Do you want us to crash? Was the only one who complained, Mineta. I've never felt anything like it, said Mina, who was dumbfounded. While the green-haired man continued to enjoy the moment, Mina took the opportunity to hug Izuku's arm like a koala, just like before. The boy didn't take it seriously. A little adrenaline never hurts. Matters of life and death. It is supposed that the Yaoyorozu family's private transport was supposed to be used only for matters of utmost importance. Some examples would be meetings with the president of the city himself, consulates, or business matters that required decent and quality mobility. All that could go very hell at this time. Hello? Momo speaks. I need you to send a vehicle to the hotel. The black-haired woman began to give the address. While the worried girl took care of the transport that would take them smoothly to the place of the boys' farewell, Uraraka made sure that the group of drunken girls did not end up throwing themselves out of the window. Tsu, please come down. You're dirtying the whole tea roof. The brunette caught his attention. The poor thing used her quirk to rise and forcibly separate her friend. I don't want to. If I touch the floor, I can get burned. The little frog thought he was playing The Floor is Lava, something that his brothers liked to play from time to time. Jiro, please stop running your jacks through my sea body, asked the girl tremblingly, feeling the wires. You're going to have to do it yourself, hic Uraraka. The violet-haired woman spoke amused. Her earlobes continued to move like snakes. Yaoyorozu. I need some help. The chestnut asked for help. Things were getting out of control. The black-haired woman finished giving a few last instructions before hanging the driver from his vehicle. With no time for a break, Momo ran to the apartment room. The girl took note that if one day she decides to get married, she would never, ever have a bachelorette party, and if he did, the main thing would be zero alcohol. On the ceiling of the room was the supposedly most mature and experienced in life among all those present. Although now Tsuyu could see something unstable. Using his tongue to strike and push Uraraka away, the little frog clung tightly to the ceiling, while Kyuka helped him by distracting a blushing, panting chestnut. "Wait a minute, where is Hagakure?" Momo asked, noticing the absence of the invisible girl. "Here," answered the girl from somewhere in the apartment. "H. Hagakure, are you naked?" I managed to question the poor chestnut. Maybe his footsteps and giggles were heard. Sighing tired from the work she now had to deal with, Momo began using her quirk to create infrared vision goggles to search for her friend. A thought crossed his mind in those moments. "I wonder if Izuku is having as much fun as I am," she wondered sarcastically, meeting her boyfriend. Her altruistic spirit is surely preventing her from enjoying the night because she has to take care of her most likely drunk friends just like her. A smile formed on the black-haired woman's face. Maybe the green-haired man is not having a spectacular time, but even she knew that the boy was doing it for the good of others. Izuku was a hero after all. But even the heroes needed vacations. Bright night. For the average person in society, the night was a time to rest after a tiring day at work. The conformity and softness of a bed were what most preferred when the sun went down. Izuku had a similar perspective. Being the most loved and respected hero in the world was a full-time thing. It was rare for the red-haired man to find plenty of time in his day-to-day life, and when such an opportunity presented itself, he preferred to spend charity time with his friends, go on dates with his girlfriend, or visit the cemetery. Now making the decision to go to an unsupervised bachelor party was already for Izuku out of the ordinary. "Wow," said the boy in amazement. The number of lights around him was incredible. The capital of the city was a very attractive place for tourists because of its huge and striking structures. The green-haired man himself had noticed that when he had to work in these areas. However, it is one thing to see it during the day and another at night. The discos, casinos, and concerts of international bands gave a special touch to the city at this time. The huge illuminated signs and the number of people dressed ready to spend a night without rules was something totally new for Izuku. The music was infinite and different for each street they passed by. The green-haired man realized that having a flashy car was the law in these places, since everyone who moved had their car as bright and remarkable as possible. "Ha, your first time visiting Midoriya nightlife?" Kaminari asked. Yet, he replied, a little surprised by the panorama he saw. "Ha, I already saw it coming from a nerd like you," Bakugo commented. Continuing with his analysis of this new world, the hero continued to be amazed by everything he observed. Almost all the people seemed to be people of high social status because of the brand clothes they wore. Izuku was aware of this subject thanks to shopping trips with his refined girlfriend. Although something intrigued him. "There's something that makes me curious," said the red-haired man, calling everyone's attention. "Go ahead, dude, you're with two veterans at weekend parties right now," said the electric blonde, hugging Mina by the shoulder. "If then someone has to take care of this idiot when he becomes a complete fool," laughed the hairy one, amused to Kaminari's chagrin. Although it was difficult for him to think with the constant tapping in his head, Izuku managed to formulate his question. "How is it that the average is not cornering us?" Saying if to go out and buy something simple is already difficult, he explained. "Haven't you noticed, idiot? Seriously, you're driving me crazy, Deku." Bakugo growled. "Midoriya," Todoroki called him from the front. "Look around, don't you see something strange?" He fixed his gaze on the people who passed by. Concentrating as much as he could on people and their behavior, the red-haired man managed to understand what his friend meant. "They're almost all heroes," said the boy, his eyes widening with the discovery. "That one of the most intelligent in the preparatory school has not happened. It's a shame, Midoriya." Mineta spoke with a wicked smile. "Ignore it, Izuku. It took me a while to notice that detail too, Mina said with a smile. without being bothered by the proximity of the hairy winged by him or that she has used his name to refer to him. The green-haired man began to understand why the press wasn't harassing them. It didn't make sense that heroes would start to get upset with each other, knowing that sometimes it was annoying and burdensome to have to deal with reporters. Hey Mineta, let's first go through something to eat, okay? I'm starving, Kaminari warned him. I agree, an apparition would be good for me, Todoroki supported him. Take us to a fast food stall. I want a damn burger. Bakugu shouted. Sigh men, said the hairy one, moving her head from side to side. Do you think that way too, Izuku? Wonder. No, I already ate something before coming, so I'm fine, replied the red-haired man calmly. I knew you were different. Mina spoke, looking into his eyes. Her smile was bigger than before. Thank you, I suppose. The boy felt embarrassed. It was weird. Maybe it was the alcohol that was still in her system or the fact that the hairy one is behaving incredibly well with her, but in those few seconds that Izuku made eye contact with Mina, in his mind the green-haired man thought that his friend looked quite adorable. It didn't help that the hairy woman continued to act affectionately with him anyway. The boy didn't take it seriously, thinking that this was the way Ishido normally was. Besides, she knew he was with Momo, didn't she? If she was aware of it, then it wasn't like she was trying anything. It's not true. First class. After finding a naked Hagakure, tying Kyuka with her own lobes, and convincing Tsuyu to get off the ceiling, the group of girls was waiting for the hotel elevator. Uraraka and Yaoyorozu were both a little tired from the efforts they had to make. Come on. Because I'm the only one tied up. Hagakure is already getting naked again, complained the violet-haired woman, who was struggling to free herself from the mooring. If we release you, we run the risk of you imprisoning us, Momo explained, refusing to even think about untying her. Hagakure, please, Uraraka prevented the invisible girl from taking off her blouse. But it's so hot, protested her friend. Drink, Tsuyu asked like a zombie, feeling dehydrated to the point of falling on the floor. This is going to be embarrassing, said the black-haired woman, helping to lift the frog. If when using the elevator things were already getting complicated, Momo did not want to imagine what it would be like to have to get to the exit of the hotel. Thank heavens, the elevator arrived before she began to imagine the humiliation she would go through. A boy who seemed to be a little younger than them looked at them confused. Good night. Just ignore us, please, he said to the boy, Momo, noticing that he looked more than surprised by what was happening. Even in the elevator, the three girls could not stay calm. Hagakure began to insult and even threaten the poor young man who had not moved a muscle, accusing him of being a stalker and a pervert when she was the one who continued to undress. Kyuka whispered to the same boy who untied her by telling her lies about the rest of her friends. One of those fallacies was about them being human traffickers, seriously, said the black-haired woman, hitting her forehead because of the imagination that the violet-haired woman could have. None of the above was compared to what Tsuyu did when things seemed to have calmed down. Azui. Momo shouted, horrified, surprised, and ashamed. Uraraka had the same reaction. The most respected frog of all the friends was practically devouring the poor boy with kisses who seemed to be starting to run out of air because of the change of color on his face. What? I'm single, Tsuyu said as if nothing had happened, slamming her tongue against the young man's cheek to attract him again. Even so, continued complaining the black-haired woman. It seemed that if someone didn't do something, the poor stranger would end up dying from lack of air. Using all their strength to try to separate their friend from the already unconscious boy, neither Momo nor Ochako noticed that the elevator doors opened. The brunette was busy with a Hagakure exhibitionist after all. Someone save me. These crazy hick are kidnapping me, Kyuka shouted, pretending to be the victim. Thanks to the words of the hair-haired woman, the people who were calmly waiting for the elevator to arrive were speechless, and some were alarmed by how the group looked at those moments. Azui was holding an unconscious young boy while Momo tried to force her away. Uraraka seemed to take off the invisible girl's clothes even though it was the opposite. And then there was Kyuka tied up and in fake tears in a corner of the little elevator. It was not the best of views. Moments later, after having to knock out some innocent civilians in an elevator, the group of girls headed to the outskirts of the hotel, where a huge black limousine was waiting for them. Good night, Monsieur Ozu. Where do I take you? Asked a well-dressed old man. Azui, what was the address? Asked the black-haired woman kindly, although inside she was screaming internally. It's in the capital, I'm sure, the frog half answered. Asterisk sigh asterisk to the capital for now. I order the man, Momo, entering the limousine with her friends. At least things calmed down a bit, said the girl mentally, sitting next to Uraraka, which was the only rope at the moment. Attempts to undress had ceased in Hagakure. Tsuyu seemed to be returning to his state of depression without alcohol. Kyuka. You can take off the Uraraka ribbon, Momo said to the brunette. As a precaution that the violet-haired woman does not say something stupid, the black-haired woman had to create a ribbon to cover her mouth. Now that they were isolated, Momo saw no reason to continue silencing her. Dasha. Having you as a true friend has its privileges, Yaozu, was the first thing the violet-haired woman said. Thank you, I suppose. I didn't know whether to feel used or grateful. It's pretty luxurious. You ride this all the time? The chestnut asked casually. Not exactly, mostly my transportation is. The girl stopped in her tracks. What? She was going to say to the brunette could create a change. Momo couldn't tell Ochako that her method of transportation was usually always Izuku's back. That's right. After time with the green-haired man, the fear she had for jumping trips with her boyfriend became more of her daily bus. Although she always ends up a little disheveled and agitated, it was better than having to go unnoticed by the press that was always looking for her. It had its pros and cons. A taxi if that's, lied the black-haired woman. Better to lie than to have to go through another uncomfortable silence. Equally, although I wouldn't mind riding one of these from time to time, you know? Laughed the chestnut. The air that emanated was friendly. It was good to have a little peace after the big scandal they caused. Momo ended up chatting animatedly with Uraraka about random things. They both felt comfortable with each other. There was no tension or anything like before until they arrived in the city. Asterisk sniff asterisk Mashireo and I once went out here. Now Hagakure became sad. Let's go buy something to drink and eat, said the violet-haired woman. I think it's a good idea, Tsuyu supported, who miraculously woke up when she heard the word drink. I don't know, Momo hesitated. She still felt worried about what Ishido was doing with the boys, especially with a certain green-haired. I don't think there's a problem, don't you think so? I turned to look at him with an Ochako smile and confidence in his face. Well, we can make a save, gave the black-haired woman. The group celebrated for a few moments, managing to get a funny smile from Momo. It's Kyuka's farewell after all, he thought. Where, miss? Asked the driver, lowering the window that separated them. To the nearest restaurant with the highest reputation, please, the black-haired woman ordered with a smile. The rest stared at him for a few seconds, each with confused faces, and that was interpreted as, seriously? What? Momo asked surprised. Ochako was the one who had to explain to the now depressed and underappreciated black-haired woman that, first, they didn't have enough money to go to that kind of restaurant. Second, they did not have enough money, just not. In the end, they ended up going to a fast food stand, where they had to wait for several minutes for the driver of a white van to finish making a fuss to just order. Uraraka had to hold Tsuyu, who kept saying, I'm single, and tried to get out of the limousine. Momo, for her part, comforted a sobbing Hagakure, who kept saying that Ojiro liked junk food. For some reason Momo felt that Izuku was closer than she thought. The black-haired woman stuck her head out of the window by instinct. However, there was no green hair in sight. Maybe it was just his imagination. The lone digger. Nothing better than some junk food before a party. Kaminari said happily, raising his hamburger as if it were a trophy. Shut your fucking mouth and eat an idiot's face. Bakugu growled, biting his sandwich as if it were a piece of meat. Todoroki. Use your quirk to chill my drink, please. Mineta begged him with a smile. Seconds later, his entire glass was frozen. I prefer my bottle. Do you want some more, Izuku? Mina asked, offering her sake to the green-haired man. With the boy's experience with the previous drink test, he was more than convinced to deny his friend's offer this time. However, the effects that he felt before began to fade, and that confidence that the brew gave him began to be lost, maybe just a little more. See, sure, I accept the bottle, the green-haired man, contemplating the design for a few seconds before taking a sip. Hee hee, you just gave me an indirect kiss, you know, said the hairy girl, amused. Izuku choked while drinking, which caused him to end up drinking much more than necessary. His friend's words were unexpected and daring enough to provoke that kind of reaction in him. Cough QK? The boy questioned upset, trying to breathe as much as he could while he continued coughing. Stop playing with Ishido, it already belongs to someone after all, Kaminari provoked. I know, genius, ha, the hairy girl returned the joke. You nerd, growled Bakugu, who was complaining about how Izuku had a partner and he didn't. We're here, Todoroki interrupted them, seeing in the distance a desolate but striking bar. Nerves and embarrassment began to fade from Izuku's system as the truck approached the scene. The lone digger read the green, and his mind began to act strange once the vehicle parked. The building looked quite bright. It was just a shiny, well-made sign with the name of the place and a huge steel door that could only be opened from the inside. I'm home, Kaminari said, jumping out of the truck. What kind of place is this? Where the fuck did you bring us, little shit? Bakugo complained, small saline explosions from his hands. This is nothing compared to what they told me, Todoroki commented, disappointment in his voice. Did you know about this place, Todoroki? Izuku asked, a little dizzy. I only heard rumors, confessed the half-ice fire. Sigh these rookies. Mineta spoke, getting out of his truck and securing her. Trust my Izu. Mina approached the red-haired man. Appearances can be deceiving, he whispered in his ear. The poor thing felt a chill. After adjusting his clothes, Kaminari took a deep breath and knocked on the huge door 3 times, small rays emanating from his body. A minute passed until the door opened a little. From it came a well-known limb that only had one mouth. Who? The mouth asked. That's Shoji. Dude. The blonde greeted happily, getting even closer to the door. They were late, said the huge boy, opening the door completely revealing his formal attire. He looked like a guard. Izuku, Bakugu, and Todoroki were surprised to see their partner working on duty, and although the job is perfect for him because he is the tallest among them all and has an intimidating appearance, it was still hard to believe. Everyone is waiting inside, open bar Kaminari. The boy smiled at one of his limbs. It's paradise, said the blonde, totally happy and excited. After each one greeted the boy, each one entered the long corridor in front. The floor of the corridor was so bright that one could see his reflection. The phosphorescent blue lights gave a rather party touch to the place. If that's how the entrance was, Izuku no longer knew what to expect when he walked through the doors at the end of the hallway. The background music was quite loud that one would surely have to shout when inside. It was a good thing that no one was talking at this time. Everyone was busy preparing for what was coming. Everyone was feeling excited, and for some reason everyone wanted to look good and be ready for anything. The green-haired man himself was surprised to find himself fixing his clothes like the rest, although he had it more difficult as he felt a little dizzy. The hairy winged hugged her arms seconds before reaching the entrance. Izuku no longer knew what to think, so he decided to continue walking as he did not find any discomfort with moving next to Mina. And then Kaminari opened the doors of the paradise, of which he spoke so much with a huge smile, and the farewell began. With the girls. Momo no longer knew what she was doing, where she was, or why the hell her head was spinning incessantly. The only thing the black-haired woman had on her mind was to get to the coveted place that all her friends were talking about. I didn't even remember why they were going to that place anymore. Was it to drink? No, maybe it was for drinks. If that was it. The black-haired woman's mind had stopped working properly a while ago. How did this happen? Well, this is what happens when someone accepts a drink from a drunk person and one ends up the same or worse than the subject, or in this case, the woman who offered you the glass. Miss Yaoyorozu, is everything well behind? He asked, worried about the commotion that could be heard. We'll be fine. Thank you. The girl replied laughing, approaching the front so that she could hear him well. Why was it that we were celebrating? Uraraka asked, who had fallen into the trap of her friends like the black-haired one. Who cares? Let's keep drinking. Kyuka shouted excitedly, drinking cocktails served above a minibar. That was the cause that they all ended up drunk and happy with life. When they finished ordering food for the road, a sobbing Hagakure lay down with her hamburger on one of the buttons. Momo herself had no idea what they were or what they did, so she vows not to touch them and ignore them. Curiosity won over the invisible girl, and by pressing them all, it caused the hatch to open or the nods to vibrate, and of course, a minibar was deployed in front of the group. Tsuyu was the first to jump into the automatic bar. Apparently she prepared any kind of cocktail, and it also seemed to be unlimited, suitable for the situation they were in. The black-haired woman considered herself quite resistant to alcohol. Since she was a child, she already had to toast at ceremonies or private parties to which her family took her. Although all those times the amount of alcohol was minuscule. "You are without a doubt my best friend Uraraka." Momo hugged her shoulder. "Hee, you blush, Yaoyorozu," said the girl, just as drunk as the black-haired girl. "Because we were never friends before?" "I can't remember." He closed his eyes tightly, trying to remember the reason. "I think it was because of a boy, although I don't remember his name," answered the chestnut with difficulty. "Oh yes, Izuku." Mentioning it brought him to reality for a few seconds. Then the name was history, and he continued drinking. The two kept talking about how much they loved each other and how much time they wasted by not talking sooner. The rest of her friends acted in the same way as in the violet-haired woman's apartment. Hagakure had already been lost. His clothes were all scattered on the floor of the limousine. Tsuyu managed to get into the passenger seat somehow and now found herself distracting the poor man by telling him how good it looked and smelled. Kyuka to karaoke, although the surprising thing was that she was quite talented at it. Uraraka was floating next to Yaoyorozu, bouncing from side to side, nothing out of the ordinary. Although everything came to an end when the car was forced to brake, causing them all to be thrown forward abruptly, Momo and Ochako were more affected by being floating. "We arrived at your destination. Please get out of the limousine," asked the man tremblingly. "And tell your friend to stop harassing me." The girls came down without protesting with an energy that was not normal. The scandal they made could be heard as an echo in the desolate place. As soon as they finished all of them, the limousine accelerated and was lost in the distance in less than a rooster crows. Even though she was drunk, Momo managed to read the name of the nightclub they were in, a rather peculiar name. "Denki brought me here a couple of times. I'm sure you'll like it," smiled from ear to ear the violet hair. While a trembling Hagakure put on some of her clothes because of the cold, Kyuka took her time to knock on the huge steel door in front of her. After doing so, the girl turned to her friends and stuck out her thumb in confidence. "I'm sorry, the place was reserved. We'll be public again in a few days," said a limb that had only one mouth of the small opening. "What are you talking about, Shoji?" "Who the hell booked it?" I question, annoying the violet-haired girl. The door opened completely, and everyone could see the great Shoji covering it. His face looked astonished and frightened to see the girl in front of him. "Dashjiro? What are you doing here?" I was totally confused and worried. "Let's use the bathroom." "Now get to the side you want. My friends and I will stay for a while." I try to enter through the side that was clear. "I'm sorry." The giant denied him the pass. "That I can't allow it. They're against the rules?" Lied. "Oh come on. Stop behaving like an idiot and let us pass." Kyuka complained, seeing him threatening. This time the girl received no answer. Instead, Shoji slammed the door in her face, hoping that it would be enough for the girl to leave. The hero leaned back against the door, tired. I made the best decision. I couldn't allow the girl group to come in. It would cause not only a disaster but possibly also a tragedy. "You asked for it?" I hear the violet-haired woman screaming from outside. Seconds later, the huge steel door propelled her into the corridor. Moving the door off, Shoji was surprised to see Kyuka armed with her amplifiers on both her legs. Apparently Yaoyorozu wanted to go in too. "Last chance, friend. Step aside or suffer the consequences," warned the violet-haired woman, pointing her amplifiers at him. I had to fight. It was for the good of the people inside. It was his duty as a guard, and as such. "You will not pass." The giant shouted motivatedly, using his quirk to start creating a large number of arms. "As you want." Kyuka looked at him, not at all scared. Shoji charged against the intruders bravely. He knew it was his end, but at least it would fall with honor. With the boys. The lone digger was what could be described as debauchery, A bar that seemed to have taken years to build. The tables seemed to be made of the most resistant material possible. There were even private places where one could enter with their partner or simply wanted to have privacy with some friends. The music that was playing was perfect, and the atmosphere highlighted everything else mentioned. Everything looked in perfect condition. The floor had blue lights that illuminated the place enough, although that wasn't what surprised Izuku the most. "Is that midnight?" asked the green-haired man, stunned, seeing in the middle the retired heroine locked in what looked like a cage. "Oh yes, he comes from time to time to spice things up. Apparently he does it because he likes to see the reactions of the young people," Kaminari explained. "Nothing has changed," he said, surprised that it looks exactly like the academy. He even had his suit on. "Guys," Kirishima called them in the distance. Tetsu was next to him, both in front of Midnight, although neither seemed affected by his charms. The group headed to the place where the redhead was. However, Izuku felt someone pull his arm and prevent him from taking another step. Ishido? He turned to ask her, surprised at the reason why she did not let him walk. "Why don't we go to a quieter place?" The hairy one asked nervously. Her face looked at the ground as if she were scared. It was extremely rare to see the girl get nervous. Her personality was usually a bouncing ball of pink energy, nothing like what she looked like right now. The face of the hairy girl was painted lilac as if she were blushing. At least that's what Izuku thought. Of course," the boy said without thinking, "the alcohol in." His system prevented him from analyzing things in depth. Without deigning to look at him, Mina led the green-haired man by the hand to one of the private environments in secret, making sure that no one sees or stops them. Going back to the rest, the group of boys was now meeting with Kirishima and Tetsu, who had also come with some friends, but none of them seemed to have noticed it yet. "It's good to see you, damned." Bakugo shook hands with the redhead. Baku bro. The boy rose from his seat to greet each of those present. After greeting each other, Mineta rushed out to see Midnight with a nosebleed that seemed endless. Todoroki, Kaminari, and Bakugo went to sit at one of the nearest tables, and Kirishima said that he would reach them in a few minutes. The three boys waited for a waitress to bring their drinks while they talked about how good the place looked. Even Bakugo admitted his mistake in judging it before. Of course he said it in a way that seemed more like an insult than a correction. Wow, said an irritating and familiar voice behind the group. His mocking tone was noticeable. Monoma? I screamed, surprised to see the annoying blonde copy quirks in this place. "What are you doing here?" Kaminari asked. Silly as always. He sneered. "It was you yourself who invited me to this silly little meeting." He continued jokingly. "Get out of here before I kill you, bastard," Bakugo warned him, pointing his hands at him. "Control your dog, otherwise, I won't be responsible for what may happen to you." The boy also looked defensive. "What the fuck did you say?" The blonde got up annoyed. Todoroki signaled to the explosive boy to calm down. Thank heaven that his partner managed to understand. "What is your business here?" Shoto asked a little hostilely. "None in particular, I just wanted to have fun for a while seeing their funny faces." He laughed aloud before leaving with two other guys. "I don't remember inviting him," he said once Kaminari left, feeling that things were getting a little tense. "I don't like your presence," said Shoto with a frown, following the annoyed blonde with his gaze. "If he dares to do something, I'll kill him," growled Bakugo, clearly about to explode with anger. The cold drinks that the waitress brought them helped the group calm down. Everyone was focused enough on the blonde in front of them to notice that the entire jug that the waitress had brought them had already run out. Alcohol began to bring out her emotions. Anger was the one that stood out the most of all. With a sign, "Kaminari, I tell the waitress to bring another jug." Everything was going great. There was no problem until Monoma came up with the idea of putting the poor maid's foot down, causing the icy drink to fall on the three boys. "Oh, you're damn dead." The blonde stood up abruptly, knocking over the table on which they were in the process. Kaminari was still somewhat doubtful of wanting to face the other group of three boys who were beginning to approach them. It seemed that both were two gangs about to launch themselves into war. "What is the brainless problem? Is there a problem?" the blonde asked sarcastically. "Excuse me," Todoroki warned him. The floor began to freeze, and his hand began to heat up. "Because of your bad luck?" Haha, don't make me laugh, Monoma mocked. It was all your fault, friend. Just excuse yourself and we'll go. Kaminari recommended. Force me, the boy provoked them. His two-winged thugs seemed to back them up like good soldiers. The battlefield was ready. All that was left was for one of the two sides to make their move and the war would begin. At any moment they just needed a signal, whatever. "Tear bitch," shouted another familiar voice in the distance. Everyone turned to see where the insult came from. Everyone was stunned to discover who had been the one who had pronounced such a strong verb. None other than Momo Yaoyorozu, the refined and elegant daughter of a well-known family throughout the city. He had just called Ashido a slut who was just as surprised as everyone else in the place. The boys were so focused on beating Monoma that none of them noticed that Kyuka's farewell group had entered a few minutes ago, dragging an unconscious shoji with them. But you have to go back a few moments to understand exactly what was happening. With Izuku and Mina. When Izuku had been waiting for his hairy friend to attack him, trying to steal a kiss from him or worse, the girl caught him breaking down in tears as soon as they entered the private environment. Alcohol was still present in his system, but still the green-haired man couldn't help but not want to do something for Mina. The story I had just told her about how she felt lonely and unloved sounded too real to be lies. The tears she shed proved it. The boy's altruistic spirit was stronger than alcohol. The green-haired man began to try to cheer up the hairy girl in any way. He even acted as a cuddly bear for her. Thanks to her efforts, Izuku managed to stop the poor hairy girl from crying and belittling herself. Although this did not stop her from continuing to drink, her sadness began to disappear and her characteristic smile adorned her face again. Mina was back. "Thank you, Midoriya," the girl thanked him, wiping the last tears that came out of her eyes. "There's no need," I answer, feeling good because her friend feels much better about herself. Without realizing it, the red-haired man took one of the glasses that was on the table and drank it in one gulp. So much talk had left him thirsty, although later he would regret drinking that concoction. "One last question," Mina spoke. "Do you think my appearance is the cause of my not having a partner?" She asked, curious and somewhat hurt. "I doubt it." The green-haired man meant. There are many people who have a partner despite how they look because of their quirk, however alcohol attacked. If before Izuku had felt that an anvil had hit him, now an approach could be to a punch to 1,000,000,000% of one, for all his head was completely out of use. Izuku Midoriya was completely drunk. "You know," a smile formed on the face of the hairy woman, the lilac color was present on her cheeks. "I think I like you, Izuku," he confessed. Izuku could no longer hear anything, his body was moving awkwardly and the only thing he could do was try to move somehow. With great effort this tried to get up and run away, but this term bending and clinging to the body of the girl winged by him. Nor could he formulate a word, everything that came out of his mouth were incoherent and were almost audible. "Geez, Izuku," he said regarding the unexpected approach of the red-haired man, "it's like you're telling me it's okay to be who?" He was struggling, he had to get out of here or he would regret it, but neither his body nor his mind paid attention to him, his two fundamental parts were hindered. "It's good that something arises between us." Embarrassment prevented her from looking into the eyes of the green-haired man. Mina preferred to close her eyes and turn delicately to where she thought the boy's face was. And then he started to get closer. In those moments with the group of girls. After defeating Shoji in a very hard battle, the group of girls entered the place in silence. None of them wanted to make a fuss knowing that they were forbidden to be there. The girls noticed that there were some rooms that had curtains that isolated it from the rest. It was the perfect hiding place for the outlaws. The group tiptoed up to the place and with a bang they opened the curtains. They were all speechless by what was in front of them. Momo felt all the alcohol leave her body. Anger and fury was the replacement for the concoction. Her hands clenched into fists and she began to stutter something I never thought she would say in her life. "Dear bitch," he said to a surprised Ashido. That sign that the boys were waiting for it had arrived. Unstoppable Creati. It was about 1:30 in the morning when the solitary excavator's prestigious bar went from a dance area to a war field. "Everything you have, bastard!" Bakugo shouted, hiding behind a wall of ice next to Kaminari and Todoroki. "How the hell did we end up like this?" Denki wondered in the fetal position. "That doesn't matter anymore," the half-fire and ice replied. "The main thing is to defeat those damned ones." He quickly peeked out to throw a fireball. Things were going from bad to worse for the innocents involved in this improvised war inside the bar. The destruction began to increase more and more. The crying of Mineta and that of the waitresses could be heard in the background, accompanied by the music which had conveniently changed to a classic song for this type of fighting. Kirishima and Tetsu struggled to decide once and for all who was the more manly between them, Monoma laughing mockingly behind a concrete barrier created by one of her companions. The song is Free Bird Lynyrd Skynyrd, guitar solo. Bakugo had created a kind of window in the wall so that he could launch thin and fast explosions, like a bullet. Todoroki threw fireballs and made sure that the wall did not collapse by strengthening it frequently with his ice. Kaminari had asked Shoto to create a wall that would allow him to move to the bar, which was where Mineta was. The reason? Get out of there, you manipulative liar, slut, and the cultured insults continued. Taking up all the space of the private rooms and covering the entrance, a very furious Yaoyorozu did not stop firing with a lot of non-lethal weapons the resistant layer of acid that Ashido had managed to create before being riddled with bullets by the black-haired woman. The rest of the girls were in a similar situation to the boys, not having a quirk to protect them from their friends' ferocity. The group had to use one of the sturdy tables as a barricade. To say that someone would come out of here unscathed was one of the greatest fallacies said by humanity, and that is that Momo seemed not to know the word limit. Is that a mini machine gun? Kyuka shouted, horrified and surprised, leaning out a little to see the heavy weapon next to her friend. Ashido is calling, warned Uraraka, who had taken an attitude of absolute depression although his smile remained, well answer. The violet-haired woman ordered a little desperately. Please censor you, asked the brunette tremblingly, her smile still present, Good. I snatch his cell phone ********************************************************************* Please get us out of here. I'm doing my best to keep the wall but it's useless. Begged the hairy one we're in the same boat here, you know? She spoke annoyed the bullets are not real but they bounce and nullify the quirks. Explain then what? Ashido asked desperately. I don't know. Why didn't you think things through before kissing someone else's boyfriend? I scold him furiously and of all the people with a partner in the world why the fuck did you choose Midoriya? Cursed his luck. Like the armed girl outside, the alcohol that Kyuka had in her system completely disappeared when she heard the first bullet fired by Yaoyorozu. The violet-haired girl tried to calm her down instantly by telling her to calm down. However, the girl knew her friend well. Years in high school with her had taught her that although Momo always seems analytical and always ready with a plan to solve any problem, she was by far one of the most sensitive people I had ever met, surpassing even the always shy and anxious Midoriya. It didn't seem to be true, but it was the truth. Small things such as profanity or improper and erroneous things were enough to awaken her delicate and sensitive side, causing her to become depressed, angry, or depending on the case cry. In a way, Kyuka liked the idea that Momo had gotten someone like Midoriya, gentle and patient, who could understand her friend's peculiar way of being. It may not sound a bit rude, but Kyuka believed that the green-haired man fulfilled the role of emotional support for Momo, and seeing how she quickly began to feel more dependent on him proved it. And now Ashido appeared trying to snatch the most precious thing that Momo had. The Poliviolito would expect nothing less. Even she would react in such a way if any slut tried to seduce Denki. Seeing her in the way her friend is now, Kyuka could tell that all that fury and anger she was showing it was nothing more than a premise for all that sorrow that he would have to go through later. Sniff sorry. Izuku was treating me so well, and I thought that sniff maybe if Yaoyorozu didn't find out, said the hairy one between sobs. It doesn't matter anymore, the girl stopped him in the middle of his confession. I'll think of some way to get you out there, okay? His tone of voice calmer. Okay, was the only thing Ashido could say. Hagakure is helping me try to wake up Izuku? When the hell did Hagakure get in there? The violet-haired woman wondered, surprised, shaking her head from side to side. Kyuka hung up the call and resumed her attention to her two companions next to her. The disappointment was reflected on his face. Zzz, I'm single. So you spoke in her sleep. The girl was well curled up and comfortable on the floor. Kiss kiss. Uraraka kept repeating with a smile. A thick depressing layer covered her. This is going to be difficult. Kyuka hit his forehead. With the boys. Mineta was a fan of the sculptural bodies of women. It was a pleasure and a miracle to have a well-developed specimen of a female appear in his range of sight. Seeing how Yaoyorozu was gradually losing his clothes was one of the fantasies that the little man dreamed of witnessing in high school, although not in this way. Just wait, steal boyfriends. I will teach you not to mess with other people's partners. The black-haired woman shouted, annoyed. There was nothing attractive about Momo at this time for Mineta. The woman looked totally out of her mind. From how she created weapons to her facial expressions, it was all anger and fury. Instead of feeling in paradise because of how the black-haired man's clothes were lost, the little man felt more in hell because of how she roared angrily. Mineta. Kaminari called him aside. What do we do? The blonde asked in panic. Can't you use your quirk and knock them all out? The boy suggested. Are you crazy? It would only make things worse, his friend refuted. If only we could free Midnight, Mineta cursed between her teeth, carefully peeking in the direction of the stand where the woman was. Tetsu and Kirishima seemed to be playing the role of two ferocious dragons protecting the castle where the princess who was to be rescued was located, although in this case it was not a castle but a cell, and the princess was a masochist who watched the two boys fight with a perverted smile on her face. I have an idea. Kaminari suddenly exclaimed. A volley ran through his hand. But I'll need your help, Mineta. I look at him Machiavellian. Before the frightened little man could claim why he had to be involved in the surely terrible plan, his friend had invented an explosion that made the whole place shake, sent shivers down everyone's spine. It seems that this worked. Keep throwing more of those Bakug. Todoroki congratulated him. An opening had been created in the fortress of Monoma. With pleasure. The blonde smiled disturbingly, his hands raised again in the direction of the wall that was cracking. All the complaints that Mineta had planned to say went down the drain. What do I have to do? I ask, having nothing more to lose. With Mina. Mina felt disappointed and scared that once Yaoyorozu manages to penetrate the acid wall she created, she will tell her that she never wanted to hear from her again and that she will stay away from Izuku and her lives forever. Disappointed in herself for naively believing that a soap opera relationship could be possible between her and the red-haired man. Mina knew that even if no one had interrupted them a few minutes ago and hypothetically a sneaky relationship had formed between Izuku and her, things would have been discovered in the same way and possibly this would have been the result anyway. But at least I would have been able to enjoy what Momo felt. A kiss was enough for the hairy woman to understand the reason why two of her friends had fallen for the green-haired man. Mina could feel that innocence and sincerity that Izuku radiated. Although alcohol had been in her favor by depriving the boy of the power to think, the hairy woman felt that her friend was not belittling or hating her at the moment she decided to steal a kiss from him. It was the opposite. She felt accepted. Now that she was trapped, the girl stopped her attempts to delay the inevitable by strengthening the barrier, and instead he began to analyze his surroundings. Izuku was still unconscious. Hagakure tried everything to wake him up, to the point of hitting him and slapping him, something funny to see because of the way her friend seemed to complain about how hard the boy was. Mina stared and contemplated the green-haired man. A little drool fell from his mouth tender. The hairy girl gave the longest and loudest sigh she ever made, and then he looked determinedly at the wall of acid that was slowly beginning to crack. I'm not going to stay here, whispered the girl, still and ready to face the black-haired woman. He needed this, to stop complaining and face his problems as the older person. He was now no more excuses. Mina Ishido had finally gained that courage that she needed so much in her life. The little whisper was not heard by Hagakure. However, a certain red-haired person can hear it despite being knocked out by alcohol. Normal narration. Kyuka was determined to stop her friend's domination, understanding that chatting was not an option. Stocks were his only option. With the help of Kaminari, Mineta managed to stick to the ceiling with the help of his quirk and start trespassing without being noticed by the pair of manly fighters. Bakugo and Todoroki were prepared to combine explosions with flares. The war was coming to its climax and everyone was waiting for the right moment to launch their final attack, ready to end once and for all whatever they were facing. The seconds passed, each one began to move, and then, "Stop," said a voice familiar to the members of Class A. a charismatic shadow watching them disappointed. Wow, they made a fuss, guys. Shiro rubbed the back of his neck, surprised. Yaoyorozu stopped his attack for only a few seconds by the surprise of seeing his companions in their hero costumes, then he ignored them and continued his attack. Yaoyorozu. Stop or we will be forced to use violence. Tokoyami warned him. Dark Shadow was hostile. I have nothing against you, so don't get in my way. The black-haired woman gave him a gloomy look. Shiro, take Shoujou, take care of Dash. At lightning speed, a tongue wrapped around Tokoyami's body and pulled him as if it were a toy. Tsuyu had risen, and next to her his bad habit of kissing any man who is in his range of sight. Everyone present sighed in utter disappointment as they listened to the newcomer hero's sonorous kisses and pleas for help. And then everything exploded more or less. Dash, what the fuck? Bakuga complained, recognizing the smell that once put him to sleep a long time ago. The blonde fell asleep. Like the explosive boy, the rest of the young people began to fall asleep one by one, except for a certain black-haired man who managed to create an air-filtering mask. And being the genius that she is, Yaoyorozu threw a sedative at midnight, knocking her unconscious and stopping the spread of the sleeping gas. Precisely, the wall of acid collapsed, revealing a calm and not at all scared Ishido, Izuku asleep and Hagakure nervous about what was about to happen. Are you ready? Momo asked, creating his trusty staff and positioning himself to attack. Yes, replied the hairy woman serenely. Without waiting any longer, the black-haired woman charged against Ishido, raising her staff ready to ruin that face that irritated her. I wanted to see her lips bleed. Currently I wanted to remove her lips for the simple fact of having used them on Izuku, something that was so intimate between couples and loved ones ruined by her. Momo was angry. Using all her strength, the heroine Creati batted in the direction of the face of her now named worst enemy. Instead of hearing a groan of pain from Ishido, Momo felt her attack stop halfway when she tried to pull him without even caring who was the cause of stopping her attack. Momo noticed a familiar scar on the subject's hand, and then I stop in my tracks to see him. Imposing and intimidating already towards her boyfriend with a guilty and sad face, covering and protecting the hairy woman behind him, as if he were her guardian. Please move, the black-haired woman looked down, creating another staff with her other hand. Momo, I speak to him as warmly as possible. Don't do it to me. He stopped to think about it. Just step aside, he insisted. Let's go home. The boy approached to hug her, lifting her up like a princess and heading for the exit. I hate you, whispered the black-haired woman between almost inaudible sobs, tightening the green-haired man's shirt tightly. Ishido watched sadly as the young couple left. Perhaps he had already surpassed himself sentimentally, but the hairy one doubted if she would ever get over the green-haired man being with someone other than her. That explains why Uraraka is still the same as before now that I think about it, he said aloud, getting Hagakure's attention. The best farewell I ever had in my life, said the invisible girl before falling asleep. Good. His spirits returned as if nothing had happened. Life goes on, I suppose. A smile formed on his face typical of Ishido. We need to talk. Izuku felt like the worst person in the world right now to have to see the person she loved most cry in her arms, and that you are the cause of her misery was horrible. All this was her fault. Momo did not deserve to go through this. It was incredible the disaster that a bottle of alcohol could cause, not just any alcohol for that matter. Gently laying his girlfriend on his bed, the green-haired man noticed how she had already stopped her tears. A face impossible to read was what Izuku now saw. I couldn't bear to see her. He had to do something that would solve things for both of them, something that would fix their situation and let them live peacefully in the future. Izuku could only think of one thing. I think we should give ourselves some time, spoke the green-haired man, sitting on the bed without turning to look at the black-haired one. It would be the best, he advised. Fear took hold of Momo. The betrayal that Izuku had carried out was not a big deal, to be honest. A kiss because of alcohol was justifiable, even so. Why I speak, surprised and frightened by her partner's suggestion. I don't want to do it, Izuku interrupted, his voice reflecting pain. But it seems to me the right thing to do, he continued without turning to look at him. I'm not angry with you, Momo managed to say, hugging the green-haired man by the neck. I'm just confused, she confessed. I love you, the boy said sadly, caressing his girlfriend's delicate arm with affection. The next thing Momo remembers from that night was quite blurry in her mind, probably thanks to the alcohol she drank earlier. The only thing the black-haired woman remembered clearly, those were the only 2 words the red-haired man said to him before everything got confusing. Although you didn't have to be a genius to deduce that from the way she woke up naked the next morning something had happened. That was what worried the black-haired woman the least now. At the moment, what worried Momo the most was, where is Izuku? Time later. Since Momo did not remember the conversation that her partner and she had had on the night of the farewell to her friends, the first thing the black-haired woman did was to start calling all the contacts, friends, relatives of the green-haired man, in an attempt to obtain clues as to where or why Izuku had disappeared. The green-haired man's mother was the first to give him information about the whole situation, telling him and assuring him not to worry about her son at all. Inko knew something, but I didn't want to tell him. Close friends such as Uraraka, Hida, Todoroki and Bakugo were next. Most said that the boy had given them a visit and nothing more. None of them counted beyond that. All his things were still in his apartment, and from what the black-haired woman had gone through of her belongings, the boy had taken nothing but his hero's costume with him. Little by little Momo began to reduce her arduous search to find him. After all, there were days when Izuku himself made appearances on television, and because of the way and manner in which he was, Momo knew he was fine. Little surprise. Today was an important day for Momo. 2 of his friends and high school classmates were going to get married after years of relationship together. The black-haired girl couldn't be happier to see how Kyuka could finally start a family and proudly carry the Kaminari surname. Of course, a call in the early morning from Kyuka let her know this. The violet-haired woman told her how excited and nervous she was about everything. Momo just smiled. Despite the fact that Izuku still hasn't appeared in 4 days, the black-haired woman had to admit that some alone time had been wonderful. Maybe her hobbies alone are a bit weird, reading novels that they found too embarrassing to share, but in the end the girl ended up enduring these days without the greenhead. Although I really wanted him to show up for the wedding, it would be nice and unforgettable for her. That they both witnessed such an important event for 2 of their friends would mean a lot. If Izuku didn't show up before the start of the ceremony, then Momo could safely tell that something was wrong. Until then, everything was figuratively well. But the black-haired woman's health was another story. Not again, Momo complained sadly, listening to her stomach make noises never heard before in her entire life. It was the 3rd time she had gone to the bathroom all day. At this rate, Momo swore that eating would be a total waste if she continued like this. The black-haired woman did not remember having eaten anything spoiled. She was quite strict in her diet. Izuku was also strict, and that is why in this department you would always find the perfect balance in nutrition. But here she is, vomiting her lunch without any reasonable explanation. Maybe she was sick? Maybe it was a virus? Momo didn't know how to deal with something as unexpected and sudden as this, so the most reasonable thing for her right now was to visit a professional. And I had to do it before the wedding. Surprise. Pregnant. She was pregnant. Congratulations. The doctor congratulated him with a huge smile on his face, getting close enough to give him a friendly hug. The feline-looking nurse also came over to compliment her. Once the chubby but friendly doctor term, however, Momo was in her own world right now. The black-haired woman did not listen to the recommendations and advice that the doctor and apparently father of a child was giving her. The only thing Momo could hear right now was his voice. And his own words weren't so encouraging. Thoughts like, what will happen from now on? Am I right or wrong? And the one that scared her the most. What would Izuku say about it? It was more than obvious that he was the father. Of that there was no doubt. The real question was, in the name of all good things, how had this happened? A few minutes ago it was all some strange vomit and nothing more. Momo couldn't believe this was happening. They were both 25 years old. His hero career was at the peak right now. To make matters worse, the father of her future child was someone extremely important and vital in today's society. If having a relationship with her Izuku's time was already limited, I really didn't even want to think about what things would be like with a baby. What should I do? Everything was against the little boy who was beginning to grow inside him. Growing up without the father figure was something that Momo could not imagine. She adored her late father and was always the one who gave her the most moral support in her childhood. The black-haired woman didn't want to think about how traumatic it would be to grow up without a father. And now that I thought about it, what would become of your child if you lost one of his parents? Izuku and Momo. Both were heroes, which meant sacrificing their own lives for the sake of an innocent at all costs. It was a golden rule for the profession they chose. Not only could I grow up without a father or mother, your child could grow up without both. Why hadn't I thought this before starting a relationship? Obviously, Momo was thinking about getting married and starting a family, but in the very distant future, when their duties as heroes are over and they both have the time to properly raise an infant. Not now. Being so immersed in her thoughts made the black-haired woman lose track of time. When she returned to reality, the door of the apartment in which she lived was already in front of her. It was good that it had arrived. The tears had been threatening to come out for some time now. Momo. The voice of her missing boyfriend was heard as soon as she opened the door. I'm so glad to see you again. She smiled happily. Feeling Izuku's warmth comforted him. He missed his hugs. Are you okay? Asked the red-haired man, feeling how his partner did not react and trembled as if she were scared. I know, Izuku. He apologized, not knowing how to explain the mistake he had made. What are you talking about? The boy asked worriedly, separating himself from her to look her in the eye. I spoiled it and he began to sob. I know, I'm sorry, Tiso. She hugged him back with all her strength. Seriously, Izuku was expecting all kinds of reactions from his girlfriend except this one, to say that he didn't understand anything and that he was more lost than Hagakure in absolute darkness was an understatement. What does Momo refer to? I'm sniff pregnant, said the black-haired woman loud and clear. And that's how Deku, the greatest hero of all time, was petrified. Some time later, once Momo calmed down and Izuku thawed, the young couple was in their living room staring at each other with faces totally new to the other. While the black-haired girl only saw a dark future for the little one, Izuku couldn't help but not feel excited and even happy. I was going to be a father. They were such simple words but with great meaning to him. Just thinking about everything he could teach that little person inside his girlfriend made him feel butterflies in his stomach. He felt so happy right now, and all thanks to the woman in front of him. I don't think we should have this baby, said the black-haired woman sadly. Izuku took his time to process his partner's words. Maybe misheard? It couldn't be true, or could it? Was Momo thinking of rejecting her son? What are you saying? The boy asked, feeling a little annoyed. I mean, I swallow hard. If I want to have a child, start a family, all that, explained the black-haired woman. But he deduced that Izuku would say, but I don't think it's the fairest thing for you. He said, increasing his voice. We are both very young. And what worries me the most, we are heroes, I whisper. There was a point. Being a hero was a risky and exhausting job. In the case of Izuku, this was doubled by being considered the most loved among all the current heroes. Momo was also quite known and respected. To make things worse, and the fact that the press and the entire world in general find out that Deku and Creati were expecting a serious baby, because as one of the most powerful explosions Bakugo could make more or less, that would be a good example. For all good things, the press didn't even know that the two were in a relationship. Indeed, everything was against both of them having a child, and yet. And I don't have the right to say it since you're the one who's pregnant, but I speak. I do want to have a child. I look at him with a melancholy smile. But of course it does, thought the black-haired woman. Izuku never had a father. It was normal for him to want to prove to himself and break that chain that came from the family that he did have what it took to raise a child, and Momo knew that he would be a great father. Maybe all the last thoughts you had were negative regarding your pregnancy, but to be honest, Momo was dying to have the newborn in her arms. To see if she would get her father's freckles out, the color of her eyes, if she would be a girl or a boy. She had not even been born, and Momo already wanted to know everything about her baby. This was what his mother told him about the maternal instinct? Whatever the explanation, the black-haired woman enjoyed feeling this new skill and connection she had developed. It could be our challenge, said the black-haired woman with a new attitude. However, I love this baby too. He put his hand to his stomach. That was it. No more chatter or discussion about whether their future son or daughter should come into this world. The young couple had made their decision and they were happy with it. In a few months the world would know to the son of Deku, the greatest hero in history. and to Creati the heroine capable of anything. At the wedding, you had to give credit to Aoyama. The place looked amazing. Being French was beneficial after all, Kyuka thought, contemplating all the art and elegance of the place. It was hard not to stop to look at the beautiful portraits that abounded in the place. Basically, the whole place was a kind of museum. The ice sculptures did nothing but amaze everyone. The violet-haired woman was happy that everyone is having such a good time. Spending so much time with Yaoyorozu had caused her a taste in the elegant and classic, although the punk rock style would always be her favorite. Of course, to keep her stupid husband happy, Aoyama took it upon herself to use an entire room to place a bar that would serve cocktails and drinks. As if things could get better, Sade had just arrived with a huge wedding cake which ticked all the boxes of the purple hair. Not at all cheesy appearance but funny, yep. Kaminari doll with his idiot face, yes. Teeth. Ha. I can't stand not laughing at the laughter, Kyuka. It's not funny, complained his winged blonde. Yes. Yes it is. The girl continued laughing. Grape and whipped cream flavor simply delicious. Cherry on top of the cake, epic. If marrying you had meant having one of these every day. I hug him on the shoulder and say, believe me, I would have married you, Sade. Rio. I didn't understand the joke, Kaminari said sullenly. Oh please. Don't be like that baby, huh? The violet-haired woman approached her husband. Don't you see how much fun everyone is having? He hung on the blonde's arm. As the newlywed said, watching her friends and acquaintances dance on the dance floor was even more fun than Kaminari's wedding cake figure. But in a moment they will find out. First of all, it's time to put on real music. The girl pulled him to a small stage, where two acquaintances were waiting for them. I couldn't agree more, Kaminari smiled, cheering up suddenly. The young bride and groom turned on, prepared, and tuned their instruments, ready to play a song that they had both agreed to play at their funerals, although fate would end up forcing them to play it on the day they got married. This song was quite old, and yet they both loved her to the fullest. Place Mr. Blue Sky. The sun is shining in the sky, there isn't a cloud in sight. It stopped rainin', everybody's in a play, and don't you know it's a beautiful new day, hey hey. Ida and Hatsum were the first to get the rhythm of the song. The Harry took out a remote control hidden in her pink dress and activated it instantly. Her partner's robotic footsteps stopped, and he began to move like a good John Travolta on the dance floor. Of course, the black-haired man with glasses could only ask Hatsum to stop, something useless since the girl enjoyed controlling the speedster. Running down the avenue, see how the sun shines brightly in the city. On the streets where once was pity, Mr. Blue Sky is living here today. Kendo waited annoyed for Tetsu to finish working with Kirishima to decide who would take her out to dance, although if you looked closely, one could tell that she had her cheeks dyed red. Hagakure and Ojiro dance slowly attached, both with a smile. They were one of the few couples who actually danced like normal people. Mr. Blue Sky, please tell us why you had to hide away for so long. Where did we go wrong? Fumikage, Koda, and Tsuyu were dancing all three happily in what seemed to be a fairly well-prepared choreography. Even Dark Shadow was moving his body from side to side. Although if we talk about choreographies, Todoroki took the gold by a lot. The poor man was literally treated like a mannequin by a woman who was terrifyingly similar to him, being lifted up with ease and performing all kinds of complex dances. Of course, the boy performed all this with a totally empty face without showing any feeling. Hey you with the pretty face, welcome to the human race. A celebration, Mr. Blue Sky's up there waiting, and today is the day we've waited for. Bakugu chased a frightened Uraraka all over the floor, yelling at her and demanding that she dance with him or else he would kill her. Finally, there were Izuku and Momo who were in the middle of the dance floor, both dancing according to the song, performing twist steps with a smile. The rest of her classmates were doing their thing. Mina watched with a smile as the rest danced along with Shiro and Satu, the three of them eating from the delicious cake. Shoji moved his head from left to right, enjoying the rhythm from his guard post. Mineta tried to hook up with all the women who were in the bar area, and Aoyama made sure that the little imp did not make a fuss. Kyuka Kaminari hoped that her friends would get married soon so I could enjoy more celebrations like these. Denki was glad that his wife looked so happy. The huge smile on her face made him wish that this day would not end. That Kyuka has agreed to marry an idiot like the it meant a lot to the blonde. And he was willing to let his wife know that she hadn't made a bad decision to be with him. He would make sure of that. First impressions. I don't think you're pregnant at all, you know. Kyuka commented, tilting her head to the side in confusion. We almost never agree on anything, Kaminari spoke, but I'm with Mrs. Kaminari in this. You look exactly the same, Yamamo, joked the blonde one. You know that divorce exists or not, love. The violet hair elbowed him, leaving the poor thing breathless. They both look quite happy, Ochako spoke, joining the conversation. What damn time does Deku arrive? Bakugo growled, the explosive boy's eyes fixed on the window. Impatient for your request to be rejected? Todoroki provoked him, as did the blonde one. He was also watching from another window. And what the fuck makes you think that if I did it would choose you? He approached him, overflowing with hostility. I don't think Midoriya wants her son's godfather to be an explosive psychopath, said the half-fire eye scared. It seems to me that both of you are putting Midoriya's opinion on a pedestal. Ida joined in. They've forgotten what Yaoyorozu thinks? Explain. The two rivals gave a startle of surprise. As if they were coordinated, the pair turned to look with determination at their pregnant partners sitting on the armchairs. In truth, Momo did not expect that their small meeting would end in a competition to see who would get the title of godfather. Abbreviating everything that was happening in the living room of the Yaoyorozu family's huge mansion. The future parents had decided to make a small group to announce Momo's unexpected pregnancy, and one by one his friends began to arrive at the elegant mansion. Why in Momo's home and not her apartment? After talking for a long time about the place of raising their future child, the young couple decided that once again they would have to pack to make a move. They liked her apartment. However, it had to be admitted that the flat place was not the best place for an infant. Both agreed that the mansion of the black-haired woman's family would be a perfect place for the little one's growth. Although there were some drawbacks. It took Izuku a while to get used to the new lifestyle at the Yaoyorozu mansion. The green-haired man wasn't used to being woken up by a butler or maid every morning with a towel ready for a quick swim next to a silver tray with his first-class breakfast ready for it to be served. His own girlfriend had some complications in having completely forgotten her old way of life. Although none of that compared to the main change in the couple's life. Momo's mother was a good person. Friendly and very energetic despite already going through the big change, always accompanying her daughter and future son-in-law at breakfasts, lunches, and dinners with overflowing good humor. Although the woman had her flaws, let's just say that her way of helping and counseling her daughter as an experienced mother sounded more like an order. Izuku discovered where Momo got her taste for teaching. Speaking of the green-haired man, the disguised boy jumped from roof to roof carrying a lot of provisions with great care. Even when one of the dozens of chocolate bars that he had bought slipped, he risked falling badly in order to recover it. Maybe I was exaggerating a little, but Izuku really wanted to please and make Momo feel good about her pregnancy. But the fact that she asked him for crackers, chocolate, and cheese spray did scare him a little. 3 foods totally different in taste was something that would make anyone with standard tastes nauseous or disgusted. For someone like Momo, who ate mostly first-class food, this was much worse, however, when the butlers and maids of his household offered him the most coveted and expensive sweets they could offer. The black-haired woman almost vomited because of how nauseating it seemed to her. The Yaoyorozu family's personal chef, who had been working exclusively for them for years, had a heart attack when they told him what happened, poor man beaten by a supermarket. Returning to the small gathering, the young pregnant woman smiled nervously at her boyfriend's 2 rivals, Todoroki sitting on her right and Bakugo on her left. Momo was beginning to think about what was the least painful way to get out of this situation, roasted or sent against the wall by a powerful explosion. I will accept the child into my family if something happens to them. I assure you that their names will be immortalized, Todoroki said as seriously as possible. Well, I try to speak. Under my care, the brat will become the greatest hero of all. The blonde smiled disturbingly. Don't listen to them, Yaoyorozu. Ida approached. Next to me, your little offspring will have invaluable training. He moved robotically. I want to see their faces when they find out, Kaminari laughed. And I want to see what they will do to you next, smiled Kyuka amused. Her husband shivered when he heard her. How do I explain to them? Momo wondered frightened and nervously, while her face outside was a smile accompanied by a few giggles. Inside, the black-haired woman was sweating buckets because of how badly the three aspiring proxies would take it. How would I tell them that she and Izuku had already chosen her son's parents a while ago? To stop the luck of the young pregnant woman, the red-haired man arrived just at the right time. Walking through the door carrying a pile of mini-market bags, Izuku arrived in the room panting and tired from the last-minute chase he had against the press. I'm sorry for the delay, the boy said, agitated. Here you have Momo. He used the last of his energy to get his girlfriend's bags. Thank you. The black-haired woman's face lit up. She forgot about the matter from before. Hey Deku. Wake up, damn it. You have to name me as a fucking proxy shit. He began to kick the exhausted green-haired man on the floor. Are you okay, Deku? Uraraka asked, kneeling down to make sure his friend didn't have a heart attack. The green-haired man's raised thumb indicated that everything was under control. Throwing all the bags on the living room table, creating a mountain of cookies, chocolate, and a few cheese sprays, the black-haired woman saw the pile of food she had at her disposal as a treasure. The others present only watched in surprise and intimidation as their companion elegantly devoured, but at great speed, all the provisions on the table. I guess yes, if she's pregnant, Uraraka commented with a smile. If being pregnant means eating all you want, she stretched out her hand to the table. Should consider having a Denki-ha baby, Kyuka laughed. When the violet-haired woman touched one of the chocolate bars, the hungry black-haired woman stopped to look at her friend with a frown. A small staff grew from the palm of Momo's hand. The girl used the small object to hit her companion's hand, forcing her to drop the candy. Yamamoto, what the hell? Kyuka complained, rubbing her sore hand. You shouldn't mess with a pregnant love's food. Laughed, enjoying the pain of his partner. Her fun was short-lived when the violet-haired woman came to her senses and stuck her amplifiers in her eyes. Everything okay, Yaoyorozu? Uraraka asked, his face reflecting concern. Coming to, Momo realized the damage she had done to her friend. Not even she could explain why the sudden onset of emotions in her system. Seeing that someone was trying to steal her food made her angry. The black-haired woman did not think things through before acting. It had been an impulse, and now she would face the consequences of her actions. Are you crying? Todoroki asked, surprised, who noticed how she tried to hold back tears. Momo only sobbed, and under his gaze, the faint sound of his pregnant girlfriend's tears acted like morphine for Izuku, forcing him to get up suddenly to scan the place in a matter of seconds in search of his partner. Once located, the green-haired man made his way between Ida and Bakugo to go emotionally support his beloved. The black-haired woman mimicked Izuku's water fountain technique, babbling that the rest understood as apologies for her behavior coming out of Momo's mouth. Thanks to this, the three closest friends of the red-haired man put aside their dispute for the title of proxy. Instead, the trio focused on calming the pregnant woman. Although maybe yelling at him to stop crying wasn't the best way to calm someone down. Bakugo was knocked out with a light blow to his neck by Izuku when the green-haired man noticed that the more the blonde screamed, the more his girlfriend cried. I think it's a good time to say that I'll be the proxy, and don't you think? Kaminari spoke. The noise was loud, and he thought that no one would hear them. A light-speed kick to his jaw combined with an inordinate cold to his lower body was what Kaminari got. Marry me. There are many types of celebrations for couples when they decide to unite for life. There are traditional, thematic, religious, country marriages, etc. The topic of getting married arose a few weeks after the small meeting that both had organized. It was thanks to the classic symptoms that the black-haired woman was manifesting that the young couple decided to take roles in the matter. And so it was. Lying on their huge and elegant bed, the future parents peacefully read different articles and reviews on the subject. Time continued to pass, and none of them had exchanged a word because they were so immersed in reading it. Momo gave a long sigh while taking off her glasses and putting aside all the papers scattered on the sheets. Izuku fixed his gaze on his partner, noticing that she was about to speak. Well? The black-haired woman looked into space. Ready to get married? I turned to look at the red-haired man. I try to digest his girlfriend's sudden idea, I guess? He replied doubtfully. You don't sound confident. I can wait. It doesn't bother me, the girl suggested, smiling warmly at him. It's not that. He hurriedly spoke. I mean, I still don't have a ring or anything, explained the red-haired man embarrassedly. What are you talking about? Momo looked at him strangely. Izuku saw confused. Q, that first I don't have to propose myself and then get married? He doubts in his voice. Not exactly, corrected the black-haired woman. Let me explain everything I learned in this time. She raised her finger excitedly. After listening for several minutes to his girlfriend's conclusions and opinions about everything related to a marriage, Izuku came to understand that marriage proposals were nothing more than a question with supposed sentimental weight. And although Momo likes the idea of the green-haired man kneeling before her wearing a tuxedo, holding a bouquet of roses in one hand and a ring as resplendent as the moon itself in the other, the two of them under the sunset after an unforgettable date and later. And then, first things first, said the black-haired woman sadly, discarding her fantasy for another time that we must get married civilly, her face determined. I see, I managed to understand the boy, so I just have to sign these papers? I lift a large number of leaves. Exactly, Momo nodded. I took the trouble to collect all the necessary requirements, like birth certificates and stuff. That sounds like a lot of work. The red-haired man kept his comment to himself. Seconds later, Izuku began to sign all the papers calmly, taking his time to observe and read small fragments of the sheet. Almost reaching the end, the red-haired man noticed something that caught his attention immediately. It was with respect to the surname. Are you going to take my last name? The boy turned to look at him, surprised and worried. Yes, Momo replied confidently and seriously. Why are you asking? Question. Izuku took his time to think things through. Typically, it was always the woman who adopted the man's surname when one got married, even so. I wouldn't like to, the boy spoke. What? The black-haired woman asked, genuinely curious. That the history of your family was lost. The red-haired man looked into his eyes. Would you let me be a Yaoyorozu instead of that? I asked, smiling. I love him so much. She said to herself, covering her mouth with one hand, trying to keep a sob from escaping. In truth, these pregnancy hormones made her very sentimental. I say yes, shouted the mother of the black hair from outside the room. That I'll go contact a painter for a new portrait, she said melodiously. That was weird, Izuku commented. Did he hear the whole conversation? He wondered. Momo welcomed him to the family in tears. His mother's last name would be remembered and treasured forever by the red-haired man. He was no longer Izuku Midoriya, now he was Izuku Yaoyorozu. It's just you and me and Eri. The pregnancy of the black-haired woman was going incredibly well. Apparently, thanks to the genetics that came from her mother, Momo met all the requirements to have a baby. This was a way of expressing it since the doctor who checked them said something else sultry. Izuku had to accept a leaflet about the positions the couple had to do if they wanted to have another offspring. Anyway, 2 months had already passed, and along with it, a big change had come in the lives of the future parents. Does it feel bad? Should I stop? Izuku asked, worried and scared, his hands delicately caressing a small lump. It's okay, Momo smiled at him. I don't feel any kind of pain or anything like that, he confessed. Okay, he continued moving his hand. A slight blush accompanied by a slight tremor in his hand bothered Izuku. Time was passing very quickly for the young couple. It was thanks to the previous months that each one kept busy to this day. Izuku had to request a reduction in his time as a hero so that he could spend more time with his now-wife. Of course, this raised suspicions in the paparazzi and newscasts, although the red-haired man made sure to keep the pregnancy as secret as he could. On the mother-to-be's side, Momo had a long and tedious talk with Sir about what he would do about his job. Things didn't smile at all for the black-haired woman, because how the serious man's face was getting darker as he listened to everything she asked of him was not encouraging at all. Until I mentioned that Izuku asked that he go visit them as many times as he wants, once the little one is born. Never in her life had Momo seen someone stamp an application faster than Sir. Going back to the present time, with the sudden growth in the black-haired woman's stomach, things had gotten somewhat out of control for the residents of the mansion. Momo's mother yelled something about a brand of ointment for this kind of situation as she took a huge group of butlers and maids with her, leaving the couple alone. It had been so long since the last time that the two of them could have some tender intimacy. Momo adored and missed the shy Izuku of old. To say that the black-haired woman was enjoying the situation was an understatement. "I was adoring him." Placing her hand on top of her partner's, the black-haired woman sent a look at the green-haired man before starting to bring her face closer to his. It didn't last long, unfortunately. "Ring ring." "I'm sorry, I'll answer," said Izuku a little embarrassed. Getting up to answer the call, his girlfriend sighed heavily. "Where are the butlers when they are needed?" The black-haired woman asked irritably. There was nothing wrong with wanting to get a little cheesy and caramel from time to time, especially when pregnant. "If he speaks," said the red-haired man. His face became serious as he listened to what was said to him on the phone. "I understand. I'll give you the address." His tone of voice changed to a sad one. Noticing how the green-haired man stared blankly for several seconds, Momo began to feel worried. "Is something wrong?" she questioned uneasily. "It's Eri." Minutes later. Rarely had Izuku told his girlfriend about Eri, the little girl he rescued from the clutches of the ruthless overhaul, and the 8 precepts. The bearer of a quirk as powerful as that of destruction at the cellular level, a drop of her blood was enough to be able to leave a hero without a quirk. In higher doses, death would not be long in coming. This innocent girl had been deprived of a proper childhood and instead treated as an object for her horrible father's plans. It was thanks to Izuku along with a squad of pros and policemen that Eri managed to be saved from that hell in which she was locked underground. Everyone thought that once away from Overhaul, the girl would go back to the way she was before. But even she didn't know who she was. From the moment she was born, the poor thing was rectified and deprived of being herself, of showing any kind of emotion unless her father asked her to. She was deprived of loving and being loved. The authorities tried psychologists and experts. None of them managed to make any progress. Everyone always said the same thing at the end of the interview. "It's too late." Eri no longer knew who or what to believe. Her life had been all a facade. There was no one she could trust, no matter how friendly she looked. She was afraid to make friends or even acquaintances. All the families who requested an appointment to adopt her ended up apologizing for not being able to adopt her. Eri never said a single word when parents came to ask her about her. He didn't even dare to look them in the eye. Sir was against a rock and a hard place. He did everything humanly possible to try to open Eri's heart, and still he only had one last alternative. Since he started and finished the rescue mission, a stubborn green-haired man had been bothering him with being able to see the little girl. No matter how much Sir wanted to leave him, the authorities did not allow it. But now none of that mattered, without more resources or alternatives. Zuku was the last thing I could try. What a surprise they all got. As soon as Eri recognized a green head of hair from the window of her room, it was the girl who was the first to receive the boy, throwing herself into his arms with a huge smile. From that day on, the authorities in charge of the case understood that there was no more reason to deprive Izuku of the infant. And then the years passed. Izuku continued to visit her and get to know her. Eri was quite similar to Uraraka. Thanks to that resemblance that the boy noticed, the green-haired man decided to introduce her to his best friend, hoping that the little girl would stop being so skeptical and reserved. It seems that any friend of Izuku's automatically became Eri's friend. The little girl was so delicate and loving. Sometimes the green-haired man doubted if Overhaul was really his father. The appearance and personality were too different, although there were times when Eri did resemble the villain. The time the boy told her about Bakugu and his childhood story was an example. Izuku noticed how the innocent Eri's smile turned a little, and she blinked a couple of times. Eri had become overprotective and dependent on the green-haired. Thanks to Izuku's efforts, the little girl began to attend a school, even accepted a family, and to place the cherry for dessert, Eri was a genius. High notes, remarkable and admirable values. The red-haired man was not surprised to hear that she, like me, wanted to be a hero. It had been years since he saw her. Exactly when all the drama of the third year began, it was a good time to tell the truth. Eri was willing to train and improve herself to be completely focused on her entry into the US. She asked the boy to stop visiting her. She needed to concentrate, and the fact that Izuku was around did not help her. He had matured so quickly. With the matter of Momo's pregnancy, Izuku had completely forgotten about her little friend. "I bet she looks amazing," she said mentally. Having finished telling the whole story of Eri and him to his girlfriend, the young couple was calmly waiting for the mobility that brought the girl to appear. Then, the black-haired woman spoke. "Just come to visit you?" she asked curiously. Izuku had told her all about Eri, but he still did not explain the reason for his visit. Just as the green-haired man was ready to talk, a polarized car parked in front of the huge mansion. Sir and Mirio got out of the car first, one with his characteristic smile and the other serious as always. Bubble Girl also got ready to leave, however, something or someone wouldn't let her. She held her arm, preventing it from showing itself completely from the car. The bars of the mansion opened, and the four heroes began to approach. "Hey! Midoriya!" Mirio raised his arm animatedly, greeting him before approaching him and hugging him by the neck. "Look how much you've grown." "Rio. It's good to see him again, Senpai," smiled the green-haired man, laughing a little when he noticed that his friend hadn't changed anything. "How is the pregnancy going?" Sir spoke, being direct as always. "Perfectly, thank you for your concern, sir," Momo replied respectfully. "Once you are born, Uncle Mirio will take you to several amusement parks. Did you hear, little one?" "Ha! I talked to the stomach of the black hair." "I'm glad everything is going well," Sir commented. "Going back to work, is he in?" Izuku asked anxiously, pointing to the black car where Bubble Girl was still trying to get out. "She's been pretty quiet on the trip. I guess she's nervous," the thin man reported. "Before you see her, I'd like to discuss a couple of things." Momo began to guide the two heroes through the huge garden. Izuku stood still, his gaze fixed on the car. He wanted to see her, hug her, and ask her everything about what had happened in her absence. Eri was more than a friend. The green-haired man saw her as a younger sister. He even considered her family. A small horn next to some shy and nervous eyes peeked out of the car. A small glance was enough for the blonde's eyes to moisten. Izuku was already running towards her unconsciously, and Eri also set off towards her savior. Just like before the blonde threw herself into the arms of her hero, nothing had changed. "I miss you so much," said the boy softly, stroking his friend's now longer hair. Eri attracted her as much as he could. Eri hid her face more and more in the chest of the green-haired man, and tears began to wet the boy's shirt. "He cared little about me." Her little girl was back. Minutes later. Adoption? Momo asked incredulously and surprised. Sir handed her some papers. That's right, Eri talked to her adoptive family, and they support her in that. Izuku, she fixed her glasses, becomes his legal father, he reported. The amazement was still noticeable in the black-haired woman, the suddenness of her pregnancy, and now they came to her with an adoption request. In truth, this year everything was unannounced and abrupt. The idea of Eri becoming his daughter provoked quite a few emotions that he couldn't identify. "It would be good if you accepted, daughter." Her mother joined the conversation. The eldest had been in the room before them, so she heard the whole conversation. "Since they are now formally married, I don't see any problem in adopting her. They both have to sign this, and in a few days Eri will be officially part of their family," Sir explained. Momo was sure that Izuku would be more than happy to become Eri's father. The drawback was that she was the one who did not know the young girl enough. Although, if I thought about it, this could be a great opportunity to learn how to be a mother before your child is born. He was complicating things for something very simple. "Well, where do I sign?" Momo decided with a smile that it shouldn't take long to get to know his future daughter well. In addition to how happy Izuku looked next to Eri outside the mansion playing with Mirio and Bubble Girl, the black-haired woman's heart was moved by such a scene. Their son had not yet been born, and the Yaoyorozu family was already expanding more and more. Time later. It had already been a considerable time since Eri officially became part of the family. Izuku was the one who spent the most time with her, always willing to talk and advise his daughter about her discomforts and concerns. Momo had to admit it. "I was jealous of a 15-year-old girl." Eri did not help much to stop this jealousy. The teenager was resplendent and beautiful. She overflowed with an aura that would brighten anyone's day while she had a belly. The reality sounded painful. These months the young girl had been the center of attention of everyone in the mansion. Everyone enjoyed spending time of charity with the blonde. Of course everyone was still careful with her, even so, no matter how bad it sounds. He liked it when Eri wasn't around. She and Izuku could get affectionate when they had time to spare, and they could even give themselves the freedom to go out in disguise from time to time around town just to hang out. Now that Eri was around, the green-haired man's free time was strictly for family moments, which consisted of spending time among the 3 youngest members of the Yaoyorozu. The activity would have been perfect if it were not for a small detail, Eri. Maybe your partner doesn't notice, but Momo did. Izuku's words resonated in his mind when he told him that the young girl could bring out a character quite similar to that of her real father. The black-haired woman noticed this side of her on several occasions. Eri loved Izuku in truth, he did. The way she made the hugs they shared last, the strange mania of caressing her back, and sometimes even the curls of the green-haired man, as if they were lovers. It was not something normal between father and daughter. As the blonde made sure to breathe heavily, the essence of Izuku. Momo also went through puberty, hormones, and everything that implied. It was normal for Eri to feel attraction and feel this way at this age. She understood, however. Since she was now her mother, the black-haired woman had to learn to correct and guide her daughter on the right path, which meant telling her to stop looking at her husband with lust. Eri, the black-haired woman called him. Can we talk for a few moments? He made a space in the armchair. Of course. She replied cheerfully, sitting down next to her mother with a smile. I've noticed that lately you've been a little bit active. Momo highlighted the last word. I don't understand. He tilted his head to the innocent side. I mean you're entering puberty. She was direct. I thought it would be a good time to talk since Izuku is not there. She looked at him serenely. Oh, she said melodiously, what has he to do with this? His hands clenched. You like it, don't you? Momo got to the point. And I plan to make him feel the same way about me. The blonde stared at him. What did you say? I don't think I understand what you mean. I don't like you. The young girl looked down. No, if it had been Uraraka, I might have accepted it. A chill ran down the black-haired woman's spine. I still don't understand why Izuku chose you. I look at him with a slight frown. Now this would have caused Momo quite a few negative thoughts if Eri had told her this earlier. However, his meeting with Izuku's mother had already taught him something important a long time ago. I understand you, said the black-haired woman, that you're not the first one to tell me. She smiled. It was Eri's turn to be surprised and stunned. That was not the answer she expected at all. Honestly, the blonde expected 1, her adoptive mother, to get upset, or 2, get depressed. This was not in his plans. You are my daughter now, Eri, she smiled warmly. Even if you hate me, my duty is to care about you. I'll make sure I deserve your love. If it had been an unknown person, Eri would have caused him excruciating and unimaginable pain just by touching his hand. The way the black-haired woman held his hand felt so maternal and true. Eri remembered the first time Izuku hugged her protectively when I was still a child. I'm sorry for having said what I said before, she apologized sadly. Now I understand why Izuku chose you, she smiled slightly. It means a lot coming from you, daughter. Something inside Momo woke up and told her that a hug was what her adopted daughter needed right now. How did it feel to have a mother? Eri wondered, wanting to cry. The blonde returned the hug with force, not wanting to stop feeling this new feeling she was feeling. A new bond had formed between the 2 women, one of mother and daughter. His family moment would be interrupted if a butler could not be able to, and by Izuku or anyone else around him who would be in charge of separating them. It would be nothing more and nothing less than. W. Momo shouted, frightened and excited, immediately separating herself from her daughter to observe her swollen stomach. Did you feel that? I questioned, just as dumbfounded as the black-haired Eri. Oh, see heavens. He felt that someone moved inside him. Call Izuku. No. Asked. Is he going to be born? Why I? Blonde panicked. getting up from the couch and not knowing where to run. It's not that. He's kicking, warning, holding air with his hands. Much? She didn't know what to do. Dash okay. No if happens. False alarm. He began to breathe with difficulty. A few seconds passed in the same way until Momo shouted horrified, seeing her daughter hyperventilate. It was a bit dangerous to use his quirk while like this, but the moment was worth it. 10. I pass a paper bag to the black-haired woman. Took the bag immediately and began to inhale and exhale. Soon after, Momo would discover that was suffering from hyperventilation. Then he would scold Izuku for not telling him about something as important as that. At least if there was something that Momo didn't have to be jealous of. For honor. Some say that wealthy families are bad, no matter the place or their history. Many believe that it is because of these well-to-do people that one does not have the opportunities they deserve today. Others think that they have a secret community that is responsible for keeping the masses at bay, a limiter for society. Coming from a wealthy family and raised under the finest luxuries, Momo didn't believe such a thing. His mother had a humble background. His father was the one who had already amassed a fortune and had a family tree that was quite respected and well known in the city. Because of fate, it was that they both ran into each other. But it was out of love that the two ended up bonding and consuming their only daughter. The way she was raised was definitely quirky and different from any other child, however. Momo never felt or saw that her parents were bad people. By her young age, the black-haired girl already understood how many things worked around her. Being aware of how heavy and laborious it was to raise her, the little girl was usually distracted by reading and learning everything that came her way or seemed interesting. Discovering that his quirk was the creation of inanimate objects through thought and desire helped him a lot to distract himself. Her parents loved her. They told her that they were proud of her and that in the future she would be in charge of taking the Yaoyorozu surname to its maximum splendor. That's why it bothered him. What did he say that? The mother-to-be asked furiously, her brow furrowed and her freshly combed hair beginning to get messy. Relax, Momo, it's not good to be angry in your state. Izuku recommended horrified, taking her hand to try to calm her. Now more than ever, the red-haired man had to support his wife. In the last visit to the doctor, the young couple ended up with an unexpected ultimatum. The professional informed them that being already in the last stages of gestation, they should always remain ready and attentive to receive the baby. Izuku wasted no time and started working twice as hard for a while and then asked for a vacation. Now being already in the 9th month of pregnancy, the whole family had gathered to celebrate Eri's entry into the US. Momo, despite already having a belly, looked beautiful in that red dress and her wavy hairstyle. Izuku sighed in love when he saw her come down the stairs. Although all their love vanished when Eri began to tell her day. How do you want me to relax? I turned to look at him angrily. Nobody disrespected the family. The black-haired woman hit the table. First dinner that the red-haired man has to share with his family, and this happens. Izuku couldn't feel angry or even think about blaming Eri for bringing up the topic. These last few months had completely changed his wife, starting with an infinite appetite and a radical mood swing. Seriously. There was a time when the black-haired girl almost murdered a poor maid who was just starting to work at the mansion. Momo's excuse was that she smiled at him a lot. We are celebrating that Eri entered the UA. We shouldn't talk about it. I try to remind him of the reason for his celebration. That idiot also entered, said the blonde, with venom in her voice. The young girl was playing with her annoying food. Unacceptable, this is negligence of the high school. Tomorrow I will go to talk personally with the principal. Momo spoke as she brought a large spoonful of lasagna to her mouth. I shouldn't have trusted him. She made a gesture with her hands. I thought that because I was a fan of Dad, it would be good to talk to him. Eri felt silly. Don't worry, honey, I'll make sure that's so. And so what was his name? Questioned the black-haired woman, pointing at her with her spoon. Kota Izumi, said the girl with disgust. Her poor lasagna was stabbed with her fork. A piece of his food got stuck in the throat of the reddish man. Sigh, I'll go arrange an appointment at once. He ignored his partner, who kept changing color. I'll accompany you. Eri got up from the table, and the young girl helped her mother up the stairs while they both discredited the boy. Once the two women were up, Izuku managed to get unstuck with a lot of effort. Big breaths of air were heard throughout the dining room, and Momo's mother watched everything with a smile. "It was a great dinner, don't you think?" he said before drinking a glass of wine. "It could have been worse," said the red-haired man with a trembling smile. "Izuku," his beloved shouted from above. "Bring us some chocolate bars, please," asked the black-haired woman. "At least he said please," laughed the eldest amused. Sighing tiredly, the father-to-be headed for the exit of the mansion. The nearest store was near the city center, which meant a possible encounter with the media. His vacation wasn't exactly a time of rest. "Darling." As in the Yayarosa mansion, another small family, but with the same sentimental appreciation, celebrated the entrance of a black-haired boy. His appetite was high thanks to the great effort he made in the exam he took that afternoon. The elder had prepared a great dinner to celebrate her nephew's achievement, although they did not exchange many words. The air of familiarity calmed the tension in the air. "You know many would be jumping with excitement in your place right now," Shino spoke, a serene smile on his face. "It's not a big deal," Kota said with his mouth full, his eyes fixed on his food. "You say that entering the US is not a big deal? Has really?" The redhead made a right-left gesture with her head. "If Deku could do it." The young man looked into space for a few seconds. "I understand that you admire him and everything," he paused to chew, "but you have to understand that he is on a much higher level than yours." His aunt was right. Kota considered himself light years away from reaching his idol and hero. The management of his quirk was not the most complex of all, and even so, the boy continued to have difficulty with its use. Deku had had the same difficulties when he was his age. However, a quirk that would break his bones if not used properly seemed much more difficult to tame than a quirk like his, which was to control water. "You don't have to rush things. Take things slowly," her aunt advised her, a warm smile on her face. "Okay," Kota made a gesture that he appreciated his orientation. "And tell me," the redhead wiped her lips, "did you make friends? Did you meet someone?" "I ask with the intention of making conversation." A ball of rice stayed in half the throat of the black-haired man. I pass him a glass of Shino water, that's a yes, right?" She smiled a little amused. Well, he reminded a certain blonde, there was someone. Kota frowned. "Does it bother you if I ask?" He leaned forward to listen carefully. Sighing stressed, the black-haired man set out to tell her all about his encounter with one of the most beautiful girls he had ever seen, even if it was only abroad. He still remembered in detail how the girl had gone from being an angel to Satan himself. "She was a spoiled child," said the boy with contempt. "Eri and Kota from friends to worse enemies." Everything Izuku had told him about his high school ended up being true. The entrance was absurdly large, the buildings flashy and massive, and the atmosphere was serious and imposing. The number of people who came to apply was too much. They all emanated rivalry and contempt for the other. Each one knew their way with their heads held high, all willing to give their all to have a chance to study at the best hero academy. He hadn't even started the exam, and Kota already had his polo shirt wet with sweat that caused him nerves, fear, and worry. His feelings were dominating him, although on the outside he behaved cold and curt. At this moment the black-haired man was a tornado of nerves. What his aunt had told him before he came did not cheer him up at all. "Your parents and I failed the exam, but I am confident that you will do well." I didn't blame her. Shino was still new to being a father and mother. Even so, Kota would have appreciated any other way to encourage him than by deciding that his whole family in general had failed miserably to enter the US. "Oh," said someone behind him, "are you also a fan of Deku?" A blonde saw him with a twinkle in her eye. Turning to see who it was, the boy was hypnotized by how tender and beautiful that young girl with golden hair looked. The small horn on one side of her head made her look more beautiful. It was ironic how, having a water quirk, he had a dry throat. The words wanted to come out, but his lips did not open and his nose was not breathing. That was bad news. "It's an original keychain," observed the young woman in amazement. "I also have one just like that. Look, look." He raised his wallet. The keychain on his backpack was identical to the one the blonde was showing him in his wallet. Both were in very good condition, and in their larger version, Deku's masked face perfectly matched the wallet full of other logos that Kota recognized as the faithful companions of his heroes, Uravity, Ingenium, Shoto, and many more. "This girl is just like me." The black-haired man screamed mentally. His fanaticism for heroes was the same in both of them. Just when the boy found the strength and courage to respond to the beautiful blonde. "All applicants for hero class, please perform at the high school theater," a woman's voice was heard throughout the campus. "Dasha, you'd better hurry." The girl adjusted her wallet. "Nice to meet you." He said goodbye as he ran. Kota could only raise his hand in the direction of the road where the girl had disappeared. The feeling of defeat took hold of him. A grayish aura formed around him. Having lost the opportunity to meet such a beautiful girl put him in a state of sorrow. Luckily for the black-haired man, this wouldn't be the last time she would see that golden-haired angel. Time later. Her name was Eri Yaoyorozu, daughter of the famous and respected transcendental family oldest in the city, or at least that's what Kota heard. "Even though I had the opportunity to enter by recommendation," the blonde spoke into the microphone, "that I thought it would be unfair not to live because of what the others went through." She smiled, determined. The applause and shouts of encouragement were not long in coming. Almost all the men stood up to praise the blonde, all shouting how tender and beautiful she was, others throwing their phone numbers at her, and even there was someone who threw a bouquet of roses at her. Apparently that was his quirk, throwing roses. Kota couldn't believe that someone of her status was a complete nerd with heroes. Her personality had taken a turn of 360 degrees when she stepped on that stage to give a small speech, from fanatical to a professional lecturer. The way she spoke with such confidence was impressive. It is to be expected from someone who has money. The black-haired man thought negatively. It's not that Kota dislikes people with money. Deku and many of his friends had money to spare, and he liked each one. However, the boy always bothered those rich people who thought they were gods because of the amount of money they had. His aunt worked hard to support him. The fact that there are people who don't have to work and still have bills fall from the sky bothered him. The boy didn't know much about the Yaoyorozu family. Lately, it had been on everyone's lips that the only descendant, Creati, the hero capable of anything, had a lover. Nothing could be confirmed yet. The family mansion had closed its doors, preventing the media from being able to investigate. The reporters were surprised that the heroine had already spent 9 months without heroic activity. The gossip kept spreading. Kota cared little or nothing about the matter. The affairs that woman had were nobody's business, although it did seem strange to her that Deku visited her frequently. According to what she told her years ago, she and the red-haired man had ended a relationship because of a trip that the boy had to make. In the end, Deku never mentioned the black-haired woman again in her conversations with him. Very good. Took the microphone, the man with a tail, which Kota recognized as Tailman the fighting hero. "It's time to start the practical exam." He smiled excitedly. Like the hero, all the candidates gave a war cry or simply shouted. The moment of truth had arrived. This was the first step in shortening the gap between his hero and him. Time later. Kota would have to make sure to scold Deku once all this was over. His hero had told him that the practical exam would be to destroy as many robots as he could, but he never told her that these would be so ridiculously resistant to the quirks. "This year we asked to make an update. If you really want to be heroes, they must defeat as many as possible," said the female voice. People with support or defensive quirks had already resigned themselves to passing. Many of those with destructive and offensive abilities shone like never before in the exam. Kota was in trouble. Being able to defeat a robot on its own took too long. To make matters worse, there were some unfortunates who were waiting for the right moment to come out of nowhere and steal the points from those who had already been fighting for a while. But he could do it. He could not afford to fail. If it wasn't worth spending time fighting a single target only to have your points stolen, then Kota would have to defeat them so quickly that no one would have time to steal it from him. Water bullets. It was a technique that the black-haired man had been practicing for some time now. Using his hand as a gun, the boy could hold the water outlet in his fingers, depending on how many fingers he was using to shoot. The water bullets could come out with more speed or thickness. With the hard layer of metal that the robots had, it would be impossible for the black-haired man to want to break through that hardness. "However, I don't need to destroy them." It was enough to put enough impact force to knock them down. The points would be counted if he immobilized or destroyed them. I still had a chance. Dash water walk. This technique allowed him to glide quickly across the ground, using one hand to leave a path of water and the other to shoot at robots. The boy already had his entry assured. As much as it hurt him to have to shoot down some targets that were already in the process of being eliminated, the black-haired man couldn't stop right now. Just a few more points. Koda said mentally, gliding through the desolate streets and looking for some robot. His body was starting to reach its limit, so he decided to stop sliding and move the old-fashioned way. Dash there. The black-haired man said, panting, but with a smile. A lone robot was moving towards him. Turning from right to left and turning behind him, Koda smiled full of hope. There was no sign of anyone nearby. This would decide. His future as a hero would be closer and closer to becoming a reality. Stopping in his tracks, the black-haired man took his time to aim at the robot's head. One shot was enough, getting closer and closer. His smile grew bigger. Dash water bull dash. In less than a second, the tough-looking and intimidating robot was blown up from the inside. All its parts shot out to different places. The metal chest almost hit Koda if he hadn't reacted in time. Your chance to enter the US was destroyed in front of his eyes. Dashed oh hello. I greet him from behind the robot. Airy, a funny smile on his face. It's good to see you again, he said cheerfully. That was, whispered the black-haired man, clenching his fists. Little by little, he began to get up from the ground. Is it okay? Do you need help? The blonde approached the boy, worried. Why? He stared at the ground, trembling. His teeth began to grind. Dash why what? Airy asked, still innocent. Dash you're selfish. Koda shouted furiously, seeing him with his face full of anger. You say you want to enter the normal way? I point to her, making her retreat. If I said that, I try to continue with his good humor. Didn't you stop to think that you take away the opportunities of others to enter? I try to blame her. Imagine how many would have managed to pass if you hadn't thought only of yourself. Roared. She was telling the truth. The fact that she took the exam had been merely to prove herself. Eri didn't think about the others. She just wanted to make herself worthy of entering the US. The exam had gone wonderfully, with almost 90 points at its disposal. The blonde achieved her goal, but at what cost? You come from a wealthy family, don't you? He continued shouting, you and all your rich family can go to hell. He prepared to leave annoyed. It was one thing to mess with her and another with his family. For Eri to have been accepted into a family as loving as the one she has now was everything. She was born without a family. He had no right to disrespect his loved ones. What do you know? Eri said in a low voice. You have no right to insult my idiot family. He stopped him by taking him by the shoulder. Let go of me. Conceited, oxygenated. The black-haired man began to struggle. Dash, excuse me. The blonde continued to bother him, her hand pushing his face. Because they were so focused on getting the other off of each other, the pair of young people did not notice the loud footsteps of a colossal robot that was slowly approaching. Managing to knock down the black-haired cretin, Eri prepared to make him apologize by beating him up. However, out of nowhere, the sun that covered them disappeared and darkness came in its place. It's he, the 0 points? Koda said in disbelief. The robot that his hero had destroyed to enter was in front of him. It had been a long time since Eri was paralyzed by fear. Things like horror movies, among others, were a cause of laughter and mockery for her. She had lived hell in her childhood. There was nothing to scare her anymore until now. Dash, come on. Move. He tried to get rid of her by force. It was no use. The blonde was petrified. Eri. I call him by his name. Believing she heard her hero's voice, the girl returned to real life just before being seen by the giant. The way the black-haired man took her by the hand made her feel the same warmth she felt when Izuku rescued her from her prison. Unable to think or use her body to her pleasure, the blonde let herself be carried away by the boy. Fear prevented her from acting for herself. Dash hell. Koda cursed. Both had ended up in a dead end. Use your quirk. I turned to look at his companion. Dash. Eri was still lost. Dash in that? He referred to the robot. We have to get out of here. Use it, it's our only hope. I tried to think of another solution, but none were viable. I don't know if F will work. I've never P-tested it on something so big. She admitted nervously. Her breathing was beginning to accelerate. I'll give you time. The black-haired man filled his fists with water. Before he could reply, the boy had already launched himself against the titanic robot, throwing with everything he had fists of water that only distracted the cyborg for a few seconds. Hyperventilation began to affect her. Negative thoughts and sad scenarios flooded her head. Eri was not sure of herself. It's okay, Eri, his hero's words rang in his head. The way Koda fought the robot reminded him of the time Izuku confronted his father. Everything will be fine. Because I'm already here even though I'm covered in blood and hurt, his hero always smiled at him. Eri. Koda called him desperately. His hands expelled as much water as he could to prevent the robot's fist from approaching. No more hyperventilation, no more fear, not anymore. Concentrating all her power in her hand, Eri struck with all her might one of the Colossus' feet, making it spread in different directions instantly. The balance of the giant was lost. The force that Koda was putting in was enough to push the robot back. And then he fell. The titanic zero-point robot was shot down again, but this time by two young aspiring heroes. Returning to Koda and Shino. That's my nephew, the redhead tousled her hair. Thank you, said Koda, somewhat embarrassed. Although there is still something I don't understand, Shino was left with doubt. Never made amends? Question. Well, he remembered what happened when he tried to do it. Flashback. Gee, thank you for carrying me, thanked a recovered Koda. There's no reason to do that, smiled the blonde unconsciously. Now excuse me, she said, looking at him gloomily. Only if you thank me for saving your life, he said, hid his face in his hat. I said to apologize. He approached her with a disturbing smile. I already said what I had to say. The feeling that someone was poking him on his shoulder left him motionless. I hope you enjoy not being able to move for 2 hours, he said before leaving the Eri first aid store. Flashback. I think you two would be good friends, Shino commented, smiling. I wouldn't like him even if Deku asked me to. He thought annoyed, and what if he thought she was cute and attractive? Now that his classes would start, Koda would no longer have time for childishness like falling in love, and best of all, I would no longer have to see that conceited oxygenated girl. And where is the father? The physical pain was something Momo wasn't entirely familiar with. Of course, from time to time she had suffered injuries or the occasional broken bone. But he had never experienced anything that put his life at risk. Her husband, on the other hand, had experienced all kinds of injuries, fractures, falls, etc. He knew what it was like to be about to lose his life. The black-haired woman would have liked to experience that. The reason? Simple. Even if I had been prepared or even had an idea of the hell it would be to give birth, the amount of pain I felt was simply incredible. Of course, seen from the perspective of an informant doctor, this would be seen that way. Momo, on the other hand, where is Izuku? Managed to ask with difficulty. Her face turned to see Eri, who did everything possible to calm her. It's on the way. Breathe, inhale, exhale. I inhale. He began to give the poor blonde a fit. Get her out of here, ordered Momo's mother, her voice authoritative and firm. Two butlers took the blonde by both arms, dragging her out of her mother's room. Once outside, Eri managed to regain her common sense and set out to do what anyone would do after witnessing what she had seen. Going to the bathroom to vomit. The fact that his little sister has decided to come into the world just now caused a scandal in the mansion. Not only was Izuku not there to support his wife, but just today the couple decided to break the news to the world about their relationship. It's not that they're looking to be the center of attention or anything like that. The intended parents thought it would be better for them to know as soon as possible so that they would then be given a break from all the interviews and so they would have more time to raise the infant. I need to call everyone. He took out his cell phone and began to dial Eri with trembling hands. Impressed by her own speed to write a message to all her contacts, the blonde took a moment to breathe and mentally prepare for whatever was coming that meant moving back and forth in the room exactly. At the same time with Izuku. It had been a long time since the green-haired man had spoken to Shinso. It was always interesting and unexpected what the mysterious man was going to say. The two old friends stayed chatting for a long time in the mall, both informing the other how his life was going. Izuku was surprised to learn that he had already opened his hero office under Aizawa's recommendation. He was glad that his friend had been able to be what he always wanted. It was his partner's turn to be amazed when the green-haired man summed up his whole life with his now wife and adopted daughter. Shinso congratulated him on his future child and wished him luck before starting to leave. They both had things to buy at the mall after all. The green-haired man went to the children's stores to see if he could find any toys for his future child. But just as we are about to go down the elevators, her cell phone began to vibrate in her pocket, the image of Eri in her A uniform appeared on the screen of the contraption, and as soon as she answered, her adopted daughter was already yelling all kinds of incoherences at her. The poor ear of the green-haired man almost began to bleed because of how loudly the blonde was talking. "Relax, Eri, breathe, and tell me what's going on," Izuku advised her fatherly. "And it's coming." He continued talking in his own way. The girl began to hyperventilate for a few seconds. "I'll be home in a few minutes. Tell your mother to go and entertain her, she is at work," I managed to say despite the state in which the blonde was. Izuku paled. The stairs had already stopped a while ago, and now the green-haired man was in front of that baby accessory store he had been looking for so much. A disturbing smile formed on his face. The green-haired man's cell phone ended up in dust due to the amount of force he used to squeeze it. Concentrating all his power in his legs, Izuku began to run in the direction of his home. He didn't care that the media would start following him via helicopter, car, or even speed quirks. The only thing that mattered to the green-haired man at that time was to be with Momo. Is here. The outskirts of the Yaoyoroza mansion were completely flooded with reporters, fans, and a host of well-known heroes. For some reason, someone had turned the entrance into a kind of red carpet for the most popular and respected heroes of the entire city. 2 heroes of the top 3 had already passed through the flashes of the cameras in order to enter the huge home. At the entrance were the watchers, acting as guards and using Ciro's tape to limit the average. Dark shadow next to him, Koji's huge eagle intimidated the reporters, preventing them from trying to overtake the tape. Tsuyu watched over a pole to see if there was any suspicious activity among the sea of people. From a black polarized car under Night Eye next to Lemillion and Bubble Girl, the monster trio made their way to the entrance. The flashes of the cameras were not long in coming. Mirio posed amused while Bubble Girl only greeted with a smile. The always serious Sir wasted no time like his disciples and walked straight to the entrance. "Good afternoon, gentlemen," the man greeted them cordially. "I would appreciate it if we would save the talk and let me pass." He adjusted his glasses. Tokoyami and Ciro stepped aside without protest. The aura that Sir emanated could look dangerous and intimidating. But the truth was different. Will it be a boy or a girl? That was what the lanky man wondered in his mind, a small smile on his face as he walked into the huge mansion. "It's coming," Tsuyu warned from the top of the post. "Open the doors, it's at full speed," he recommended. Confused by their partner's words, the 3 boys looked at each other strangely for a few seconds. In those small seconds that they were distracted, a green spot sped between them. The steel bars were broken as if nothing had happened by this invisible force. "That F was Midoriya?" Ciro asked, stunned. "I guess so," Fumikage commented, a little scared by the speed that the red-haired man could have. On his way at full speed, Izuku swore that he had passed many of his friends who were on their way to the mansion. Although seeing Sir had surprised him quite a bit, then there would be time to think. Even with his quirk active, the green-haired man moved quickly but very carefully through the corridors of the mansion. Again, familiar faces crossed his path. Then he would greet them. Already seeing with a twinkle in his eyes the stairs that would take him to his bedroom, the green-haired man stopped using his quirk to go up naturally, using that moment to take a deep breath and prepare for what was coming. Outside his room were Eri, some butlers, and his mother, as Inko had done to him to get there faster than him. It was a mystery. "He's been asking about you all the time," his mother informed him with a warm smile. "Dad," the blonde threw herself into her arms. "Ma been screaming for hours and why?" Tears threatened to come out. Fondly stroking his daughter's golden mane, Izuku crouched down enough to look into his eyes. A confident smile was enough to reassure Eri. When the green-haired man smiled like that, the young woman was sure that everything would be okay by now and there would be nothing to worry about. Sighing for the last time, Izuku positioned himself in front of the door of the room. Momo's screams and crying could be clearly heard from outside. It was the moment of truth. As soon as the green-haired man closed the doors behind him, the screams of pain were no longer heard. And after a while, the cry of a new being was heard throughout the mansion. Family. Never in his life would Izuku have imagined that something so small and delicate could bring him so much happiness. His little girl had already stopped crying a while ago. Her almost inaudible breathing when she slept hypnotized him. Could hold her in his arms for eternity, and I would never take my eyes off him for a second. I would always be aware that nothing bad happened to him. I would be his protector and guardian, his father. I love you so much right now. He turned to look at his exhausted wife. I want to hold her, asked the black-haired woman tiredly, her breathing agitated and her eyes half closed. With all the care in the world, Izuku passed his little girl to her mother. Despite having gone through a superhuman effort, Momo had more than enough strength to be able to carry her daughter. Tears of happiness began to fall non-stop. Her little girl was more beautiful than she could have imagined. The black-haired girl managed to crack a painful smile. She's a bee perfect. Next to her forehead with her daughter's little head, she has your freckles. She laughed, sobbing. Before he could answer her, the doors of the room began to open slowly, Eri's curious eyes peeking out carefully. I'm done. The blonde asked innocently. Come here. His father beckoned to him with his hands. Approaching shyly and nervously, the girl began to see her little sister more clearly. Eri gasped for air. The little creature in her mother's arms was incredibly small and adorable. None of the giant, fluffy stuffed animals in her room compared to such cuteness. Pekan? He asked without taking his eyes off the little girl. Now you're the older sister. Izuku smiled warmly at her. Light and delicate, it was like holding a few sheets in your arms. Her little sister weighed nothing. The calmness with which she slept seemed incredible to Eri. Just a few minutes ago, the girl swore that her cries had been heard throughout the neighborhood. Another thing that seemed extraordinary to him was that facial feature that his father had passed on to him. The freckles on his cheeks indicated that indeed she was the daughter of the greatest hero of all. It would be recognized by everyone everywhere. What's his name? Asked the blonde happily. Having her little sister in her arms made her feel good. Lillian, Momo said with his eyes closed, and little by little she began to fall asleep. Lillian Yayarozu, Izuku finished saying. Momo's mother watched the scene tearfully. As a mother, seeing how her daughter formed her own family was captivating to her. However, there was still something I had to do. Leaving the room and heading to the living room, the biggest scream at the top of my lungs. It's a girl. Bakugo cursed all the heavens for his luck while he paid Todoroki a wad of bills. Many thought that raising a newborn was a challenge that only the most committed and united couples could endure, all the complex care and activities that one had to perform every day in addition to the explicit and primordial food that one had to prepare for him. Friends and family always told them the same thing. Forget sleeping for a month or more. With everything they had been told, the young parents were obviously more than traumatized and frightened when they began their first days of kinship. As soon as the whole family returned to the mansion after a visit to the doctor, the pair did not spend a single second more of their time, and between the two of them they began to prepare everything necessary for their first-time parents. Leaving little Lillian in the arms of her older sister, black-haired and green-haired moved from one side to the other in the mansion without any rest and at a hurried pace. Izuku had to use his quirk. Butlers and maids watched in surprise and somewhat sad as their two masters worked with all their spirit on the duties they should learn to get used to from now on. Both parents asked everyone in the mansion that they had to do this on their own. While the newborn slept peacefully in Eri's arms, her two analytical parents sweated the drop preparing diapers, food, clothes, etc. Izuku used his quirk at its maximum power to go at superhuman speed from the store to his home, all with the purpose of buying something that they lacked. Momo created clothes, toys, and even music boxes with songs that would take years to be created by an artist, all this while preparing a dozen bottles. Brea's potato. You might want to read this. I tried to get her attention, her cell phone in one hand and her little sister on one arm. "It's okay, Eri, we can do it on our own, thank you," he said, passing by his side without stopping while carrying a huge wardrobe with a feminine theme. "Taking care of your sister is enough help." His mother's voice was heard from the kitchen. "You can show your grandmother's sweetness." Sat next to the blonde, the eldest of the Yayorozu. All afternoon it had taken them all afternoon and part of the night to finish all their chores, but it had all been worth it. Her little girl's room was more than ready. Supplies and everything a newborn needed was prepared and well guarded, not to mention that they had prepared enough to supply Lillian for more than a month. "Do you really not want help?" Eri asked a third time. Both of her parents were on the verge of collapsing from exhaustion. "Yon, it's be fine, we're done with this and then we'll go to bed." She prepared the crib by placing sheets and blankets. "Okay Yon, it's time to de-sleep." Momo's eyes were heavy, and even so, the black-haired woman rocked and fed the newborn. Leaving the very warm little girl in her crib with all the care in the world, the black-haired girl let her husband cover her with his pink and soft blanket. They both sighed exhausted. Leaning on the shoulder of the green-haired man, the pair stared with a tired smile at their daughter, covered in pink and dressed in pink. The young Lillian slept peacefully in her crib with a music box in the background. "Well, bedtime I suppose." I turned to look at his wife with tired eyes. "Yes." A quick kiss, and then silently go to the exit and turn off the lights. The almost inaudible sound of the door closing was heard. Seconds passed, then minutes. Both still did not stop seeing each other and moving in front of the door. The two agitated parents began to feel dissatisfaction running through their veins. A nervous tic began to give Momo. The goatee that Izuku was still holding was deformed by the force he put on. And then they both slammed back into the room. "I guess now would be a good time to tell you," Eri spoke, lying on her bed. Passing through the destroyed door of her little sister's room, the blonde assumed that her parents were in her room thanks to the path of baby utensils that they left on the road. Opening the door subtly, the young woman was a little surprised to see her two parents fast asleep in her bed. A warm smile adorned his face as he approached them. In the middle of her parents, Lillian slept, hugging her mother protectively. Izuku covered both female arms with his two arms until he stuck them to his chest. A small giggle wanted to escape Eri. The little girl could not be more comfortable and safe in the world. Her mother was the first layer, and to increase protection, her father held both firmly with his scarred arms. The blonde sighed, feeling somewhat proud but guilty that she hadn't told them what she had discovered when she was reading about the growth of babies. It seemed strange to him that his own parents, smart as they are, didn't take into account that they both had calm personalities. Naturally, their daughter would have to come out the same. Taking one of the nearest sheets, Eri covered the trio carefully so as not to cover her little sister and make it difficult for her to breathe. Turning off the lights and closing the doors, a yawn escaped him after such a busy day. Tomorrow she would tell her parents about the small detail, or maybe not, who knows. After all, the young woman liked to see her parents try so hard. I didn't want to ruin their fun. Breaking news. If the mere news of the confirmation of a relationship between the greatest hero Deku and Creati had already caused a scandal, one could not imagine how ridiculously scandalous the world became when they received the news of an engagement between the two, and to put the cherry on dessert, the pair had already conceived their first child. The news flashes were not long in coming, and the thousands of videos and articles on the internet began to appear without any rest. Absolutely all the newspapers and newscasts had their sights set on the young couple of heroes. Reporters, interviewers, and journalists did everything they could to get the slightest event out as quickly as possible. Friends, relatives, and acquaintances of the pair were bombarded with requests for private interviews, televised and even broadcast on the radio by the different news companies. Some friends, such as the Vigilantes, accessed these interviews without any problem, providing vital and interesting information to the news. Other heroes, such as Uravity, Ingenium, and others, preferred not to give any information out of respect for the privacy of their two friends. And then there was Bakugu, who just sent all those annoying reporters with their tails between their legs. And then we finally came to the present day. Outside the entrance to the Yayarosa mansion, hundreds of people were gathered with the sole purpose of finally hearing from the mouths of the same heroes all the history they had been waiting for weeks. Some had been waiting for days, weeks, months. Tents and trailers are abounded on site. It was almost time for the doors to open for them, and every reporter and journalist could not help but be nervous or anxious to enter the elegant and transcendental home of one of the wealthiest families in the city. And if they were outside, one would start to think, how are they inside? Mom, I think Lillian is presentable enough. Eri spoke, and the blonde watched nervously as her mother dressed her sister. Nonsense. The first impression is always the most important, said melodious Momo. The black-haired woman did not stop putting accessories on the little girl. The three women were wearing colorful and elegant dresses that the black-haired woman's own mother had given them. The time that the two older ones had taken had been insignificant compared to the hours that Momo had been dressing Lillian. Using her quirk, the woman created left and right indefinite amounts of tailor-made dresses for her daughter. Ladies, it's almost time to start, knocked on the door, and a butler spoke. Mom. The bored Eri reached the limit of her patience. Okay. Just one more thing. A wide-brimmed mini hat came out of her hands. The small accessory was delicately arranged on the little one. Now can we go down? The blonde asked desperately. I wish the press would come more often. I look at her daughter tenderly. Well, if she looks adorable, Eri thought, Lillian was her parents' perfect match after all. It was as if fate had taken the most characteristic features of both to mix and improve them into a single being. Big green eyes, freckles, and small black hair combined with an innocent and round face of a baby. Seeing the little girl and not wanting to hug her and tell her, I love you, should be a challenge that only the strongest-willed should try. Although all her pastel clothes made her look more funny than adorable at this time. With their daughter in their arms, the three women walked steadily to the living room of the mansion. As soon as they had arrived, one could already hear Izuku's nervous babbling among all the bustle of questions and sounds of flash cameras. Momo's heavy footsteps echoed in the ears of every reporter in the room, and the doors slammed open, revealing the 3.5 beauties of the Yayarosa mansion. All the cameras pointed and shot at will at the beautiful newly arrived women. A confident smile formed on the face of the black-haired woman. This was the perfect opportunity to put the family name back at the top. Spending so much time away from society had given the Yayarozu a bit of a bad reputation. Momo had to make the best impression in order to regain the prestige and trust of the rest of the city through the cameras. However, what? Lillian's small, delicate hands pressed her clothes as hard as they could while she hid her face in her chest. The maternal instinct hit the black-haired woman like a truck at full speed. The small sound of what seemed to be her daughter's sobbing broke Momo's heart. Without spending any more time, the heroine sent the mission to the devil to restore the family name for something much more important. Please, I ask you to stop taking pictures and ask questions one after the other. I turned to look at all the reporters with a frown. But then, as you expect, let's make news. Who does he think he is? Typical attitude of someone rich. These and many other comments began to be heard throughout the room. Seeing that his words had no power over the press, Momo decided to opt for the second option and send her husband a look. The quiet, shy green-haired man in a suit in an armchair stood up with a disturbing and darkened smile when he saw Momo's gesture at him. You've already heard it without cameras. The huge, imposing figure of the red-haired man overshadowed the insignificant reporters. The next day, the headline of many of the newspapers surprised more than one due to the scarcity of information, and the peculiar headline, "She's a Girl," was the only thing she said in an entire section in which the poor writers tried to write nonsense just to be able to fill in all the empty space they had prepared. A single photo of little Lillian clinging to her mother's breast could be seen in the article. It was a pity that the hat had covered his face. The uncles. That their little girl ended up coming out of an angel from heaven that did not cause any disorder or problems was quite lucky now. Lillian, being a loving and friendly baby, was taking luck to another level. I really envy you guys, said a blushing and playful Uraraka. Little person on her lap did not stop moving and laughing. Congratulations, Midoriya, Yayarozu. Your daughter couldn't be more perfect. Ida smiled at them, a gleam of pride on her face. The young parents only became more attached to each other with a gesture of happiness. Knowing that their close friends adored their daughter made them feel proud in some way. The small, brief meeting that the pair had organized ended up becoming a kind of celebration of the little black-haired girl who had decided to wake up from her nap to go down to play with the grown-ups. "It's my turn. I want to hold it," Mina demanded desperately, her hands trembling with emotion. Some were sitting on the couches, others preferred to stand and enjoy the fruit dessert that Eri and both of the couple's mothers served, and then there was Bakugu, who preferred to sit on top of the piano and eat a chocolate bar. Approximately everyone he knew was present. Even the stoic and unshakable Sir had decided to choose to pay a visit. As expected, Mirio and Bubble Girl, his two most loyal assistants, chatted and watched Lillian from an armchair, in which the green-haired man enjoyed his dish. Some were surprised to see such an important figure of heroic society in such an insignificant and somewhat informal meeting. Most would be left with their mouths open if the thin man revealed the reason for his visit. Like the rest, the older one just wanted to hold the girl. Up. "You're disgustingly adorable," Mina said as she lifted the happy baby up and down. "Ow, see, and it makes me want to have one too," she observed and spoke tenderly. Hagakure, you couldn't see it, but apparently the young woman was touching the little girl's freckled cheeks. "I would think twice. It must have hurt a lot or not." He looked at Momo Gyre. Heading towards the furniture where her friend was, the black-haired woman had to pass by where Lillian was, forcing the two hyperactive girls to hand over their daughter to her by kicking and stretching the girl's hand. Sitting next to the violet hair, Momo placed her daughter on her lap to fix the little messy hair she had. It hurt, but it was worth it. He gestured to Kyuka for her to hold the happy girl. The young woman took the girl nervously. The violet-haired girl was very surprised that she weighed almost nothing. Holding her at the level of her face, Jairu stared at the bright green eyes of the little girl. Blinking after blinking, the two females looked curious. It wasn't until Lillian let out a loud laugh that the older one couldn't help but ignore. "Well, maybe I even want to have one." He began to return the baby to his mother. The little creature's little hands stretched, catching Kyuka's headphones. No, Lillian, let go." Momo tried to correct her. The little black-haired girl did not stop stretching and pulling the violet hair. "Okay, it doesn't hurt." He began to tickle the girl with his other earpiece. It didn't take long until the black-haired woman gave up and let go. Those few minutes that Kyuka had held the little girl in her hands had been enough to wake up something asleep inside her. Holding her in his arms had made her feel complete in a spiritual way. That innocence that emanated. The time of tenderness and reconsideration would not last him, unfortunately. Taking advantage of the family atmosphere, jump in the middle of both Mina Yamamo. "What do you think if you let Izukami?" "No," he said dryly, and it would be the black-haired one. The little girl on her lap saw him strange. "Selfish," he said under the hairy one. From the hugs and experienced treatment of the veteran too, Lillian Yayorozu had been held by kind of hands. In some cases she was the protagonist of photos by Aoyama, placed on the shoulders by Kirishima, swinged by Siro and his bands, caressed with Ojiro's tail, fed with the tastiest sweets ever existed by Sato. Some are more memorable than others, such as the example of petting a bunny that Koda brought with him, or the fact that his hair is lifted by the static that Kaminari emanated. To feel the tallest when being lifted up by Shuji, and then there was Dark Shadow's unusual reaction to seeing the little girl. For some reason that the shadow did not want to say, the girl caused a terror like no other to Tokoyami's poor companion, strange and sad for the girl. But everything is solved with an ice sculpture of herself. It also helped that Mineta was beaten by most of the girls by mentioning how good she would look in the future. It was thanks to Lillian that the serious Sir did not stop smiling for a while analyzing and, at the same time, playing with her. Mirio and Bubble Girl also helped by confusing her with the blonde's quirk and distracting her with colored bubbles from the blue hair. Almost all of them had had their time with the black hair, almost all. "Don't even think about it, bastards." Bakugu growled, seeing how most of them looked at him with malicious smiles. The group of boys began to bother him and complained that only he had not held the little girl. The women sighed, disappointed to see how a fight like that was already beginning. The two parents were somewhat skeptical of the violent blonde, After exchanging words, Izuku managed to convince his wife to give the explosive boy a chance. But Momo would take worries. Bakug, he spoke firmly with his little girl in his arms in front of the blonde man who was holding a beaten Kaminari. I want you to know that I don't do this because I want to. Lillian just looked at her mother strangely. Honestly, even though the blonde may be a renowned hero, Momo simply couldn't let go of all the damage the blonde had done to Izuku in his childhood. The first time the green-haired man told her the story of both, the black-haired woman only felt contempt and hatred towards the blonde. It was not until her husband finished telling her the story in detail that Momo decided to forgive the blonde. Those feelings, increasing how hostile Bakugo is by nature, made Momo hesitate with all the right in the world to allow her to touch her daughter. This little person was everything the black-haired woman could have wanted. It was his world. At the slightest sign of danger that the boy shows, Momo would be more than ready to eliminate the blonde from the face of the earth. Of course, I would let Izuku and Eri get even before that, but nothing was said yet. So be warned. Momo looked at him with a frown, *Sai* hold her. He approached with his daughter in his hands. And what the fuck makes you think that? Without him being able to finish his sentence, Bakugo was used as a chair by the innocent black-haired woman on his lap, green colliding with red. Anger and strength were met with serenity and love. The big green eyes that he inherited from his rival caused a little irritation to the blonde. Well, the whole face of the girl bothered him, to be exact. What? I asked the little girl with my arms crossed. Unlike the rest, Lillian did not seem to have any kind of reaction with him. It wasn't until the blonde wrinkled his face even more that the black-haired woman made her first move. Move your head to the side. Bakugo's face of contempt and disgust disappeared as he cast his gaze deep into the girl's eyes. That look they exchanged was enough for the blonde to notice. This brat's gesture changed to one of horror and amazement. There were few people who were not afraid of him, very few people with this girl. The number had increased. Take this brat. In one way or another, the blonde felt defeated for a girl. Her name is Lillian. She immediately snatched her black-haired daughter. The little girl's eyes were still glued to Bakugo. One more time the blonde pressed his jaw and fists. If it was already difficult for him to have to compete with Izuku, and Shoto Bakugo didn't want to imagine how terribly insignificant he would feel when that brat pierced him. Those eyes were cursed. Her father's curse would haunt the girl. The blonde was sure that it wouldn't be long until the brat realized that he was a hero. It was what he was born to do. What just happened? Life was treating the Yaoyorozu family wonderfully. It was as if Mother Nature had taken pity on the novice parents with their daughter. The little one had turned out too well for them to be true. Now with her hair tied in the same style as her mother's, the innocent Lillian played with her mother on the floor of her room. You're so smart. I feel so proud, she said to her smiling and happy girl. The huge puzzle she gave her to entertain herself was put together in a matter of minutes. Although she still does not know how to speak, Momo knew that her daughter could understand her in one way or another. The way in which she demanded to be hugged by stretching her arms was proof of this. Once in her arms, both black-haired girls began to observe the image they had formed with the puzzle. A pile of fruit on a basket undoubtedly looked appetizing. Do you want some? Momo asked her, and the little girl nodded immediately. Will I go and bring some to stay here, okay? I leave her in her crib. Seeing her daughter sad broke her heart. However, sooner or later Lillian had to learn not to be with her parents all the time. This was a good time to prepare her in that aspect. The image of her little girl stretching her arms in her direction while making depressing sounds was heartbreaking for her. They will only be for a few moments. I'll be back quickly, I promise. He gave her a comforting smile before heading to the exit. With her eyes lowered, the black-haired woman began to walk and walk and walk. Being immersed in her thoughts of grief had made the young mother lose track of time and space. It was not until her daughter's voice made a sound of effort that the black-haired woman returned to reality. When it should already be on its way to the kitchen, she was stunned to notice that actually I hadn't even made it to the exit of the room. What? She exclaimed, surprised as much as she could. Stopping her walk caused her to feel an invisible force that attracted her from behind. Turning immediately, The black-haired girl's eyes almost pop out of surprise that it would be to see her little and innocent girl stretching out his arms with his puffed cheeks and a concentration never seen before. Momo felt her blood freeze while it was still dragged by such an invisible force. It was not until the mother perceived her offspring's hands that she breathed again. How is it possible? She saw Lillian, incredulous, who was pulling on her clothes, trying to climb on it. Taking the little girl and lifting her up with her face to a surprised man, the black-haired woman intertwined glances with her daughter. It wasn't possible that it was his quirk, or was it? It was crazy to think that his girl could have manifested her ability at such a young age, and what was most surprising of all was not that. What exactly was your quirk? Minutes later, the whole family was gathered in the living room of the mansion. Neither Eri nor Izuku had bothered to change their clothes. One came from work and the other from the academy. The news that their mother/wife gave them was undoubtedly alarming and worrying more than anything. Currently, the little girl slept peacefully in her mother's arms. All eyes were on her in alert mode, waiting for it to make a different movement than just breathing and inhaling. The ticking of the clock was the only thing that could be heard. Where is the girl? Sir came in suddenly with his two assistants. As soon as Momo called Izuku with panic in his voice, the first thing the green-haired man thought of was his mentor, who had experience in this type of quirk manifestation. The stoic and serious Sir made his presence next to Mirio and Bubble Girl. One could tell that the lanky adult was somewhat agitated and even nervous. Thank you for coming. I don't know how to explain it. We were putting together a puzzle and then, the black-haired woman began to relate the facts. I don't need to explain it. I'll see for myself, he said, adjusted his glasses. Everyone present looked at him with surprise. The man's plan was simple: to recapitulate verbatim the events that caused the manifestation of the little girl to have a more concrete vision of the reason for her accelerated manifestation of quirk. Which meant that everyone had to leave mother and daughter alone next to a camera that recorded everything. Once their plan was in process, the rest of the group stayed listening behind the door for the phenomenon to emerge. It's happening again. Momo called them somewhat altered. They all rushed in to see with their own eyes the truth of the facts. Interesting. Sir felt excited. A smile of determination formed on his face. And there was Momo walking without stopping while the little girl stretched out both hands, asking her not to move away. There was no doubt that this was the work of the little girl's quirk. But there were still many things unanswered. While I remember your quirk allows you to create any inanimate object or not. I talked to the black-haired woman. That's right, she nodded as she firmly held Lillian in her arms. The girl seemed not to understand anything that was happening. The natural thing would have been for her to inherit your quirk. It goes without saying that the one for all cannot be genetically passed, he stressed. What do you mean? I questioned. I don't understand things very well, Momo. I can only think of one explanation for all this. Fixed his gaze on the little girl. Although I remember Midoriya's mother has a quirk that allows her to attract small things, I report, there is a possibility that Lillian inherited the quirk from Mrs. Midoriya and has improved it, he explained. And how is that possible? Izuku asked. It's just a theory, but I think that Midoriya's one for all had something to do with it. That is, that it has served as some kind of intensifier. I come to that conclusion. Although not 100% certain, the eldest hypothesis seemed to make a lot of sense to the family. However, the fact that the little black-haired girl was able to awaken her quirk at such a young age was still impressive. Cases like these always meant only one thing: a bright future for the user. The image of a certain explosive blonde crossed Izuku's mind. It was just like what his rival had happened to him. Something that shook him and worried the red-haired man even more. I need to make some notes. Does anyone have a pen? Sir asked. Here, the still astonished Momo immediately created a pen. Lillian had the opportunity to see for the first time how her mother used her ability. And then he decided to imitate her with a smile. From one of the little black hare's hands, a pen came out in the same way as her mother's. The innocent girl stretched out her hand to pass the object to Sir, who could not believe what was happening. Everyone present was left with their mouths open at what happened. No one had anything to say about it. I will come to visit them more often, was the only thing the older man said before retiring with his mind on the verge of collapse. It was a great surprise for Inko Midoriya to receive a call from his son in the middle of the night telling him that his granddaughter had inherited his quirk. The old woman fell down in a faint instantly. One more? Today was a special day at the Yayarosa mansion. Family and friends enjoyed inside and out the festivity that the family was celebrating. Despite having had her at such a young age, Momo, in one way or another, already felt like an expert in being a mother. She even felt a little older. And today was the day her little girl was born. When her husband told her about the little meeting that her friends were planning to make with the little girl loved by everyone, the black-haired woman was not the one to deny them entry to the luxurious mansion. Although the way things were getting, Momo was starting to regret her decision. God, I am still wondering why I married him, said Kyuka, disappointed and embarrassed. I think it's funny, said Uraraka with her radiant smile. And dangerous, Tsuyu added. Seeing how Kaminari began to electrify whoever was nearby because of his poor control when he was drunk was funny and troubling to watch. The good thing about all this was that the group of girls were separated and out of danger from those traveling drums. It was as if each genre had its own space to develop. While the men feasted by drinking and eating meat outside the mansion, the women preferred the warmth and conformity of the living room, where they each enjoyed a soufflé prepared by the most professional pastry chefs in the city and Satu, of course. As exquisite as the dessert was, the real reaction that each one kept was for the birthday girl. Where is my favorite niece? The cry of an already drunk Kirishima was heard from outside. Don't you think it's taking a while? Mina asked before putting another bite in her mouth. Maybe I should go and see how he is, Momo said, a little worried. The doors of the entrance to the corridor opened, revealing the young green-haired man, somewhat singed but to the relief of his wife, still sober. They still don't go down? Izuku questioned, approaching the black-haired woman with the same face she had. Before it could reply, the footsteps of people coming down alerted parents. Wearing a cream and white dress, Lillian Yayarozu went down with her sister Eri, who was dressed in light blue. Thou was not long in coming from the group of girls except for her mother, who felt her heart tremble at how beautiful her girl looked. Izuku had a similar reaction to his wife. He still couldn't believe how fast his little girl had grown. Eri whispered something in her sister's ear before letting her walk on her own and addressing her parents. Hello, greeted Lillian shy but elegantly, the arms of both of her parents wrapped around her almost as soon as she spoke. You come too, he beckoned her to approach the blonde Momo. I already felt forgotten, joked Eri, amused. It wasn't until the family felt a flash that they separated. This one goes for my wallpaper, Hagakure said happily. We're going to take your time, Uraraka warned them as she dragged the rest out of the room. Arranging and giving the last details to their daughter, the whole family sent glances at each other, each one smiling from ear to ear before heading to the outskirts of the mansion, where a huge cake was waiting for them. It was time to blow out the candles, and all Lillian wanted for her birthday was something only her parents could give her and nothing but them. I want a little brother. He used his quirk to create a miniature of a smiling boy. Everyone was silent. Momo and Izuku saw each other. The green-haired man was willing to explain to his daughter that he had just asked for it. He could not pass until a long time had passed. However, feeling his wife's hand made him stop and let Momo do the talking. Of course. Why not? The black-haired woman smiled happily at him. Sometimes a mother had to make sacrifices for her children. Momo would do whatever it takes to make sure her little girl keeps that smile on her face for a lifetime, even if it meant going through 9 more months of pregnancy and unshakable pain. With his family by his side, she was sure she would endure whatever came her way. Uraraka, dressed in an apron with great concentration, opens a pot full of smoke. Azui and his